The woman jumps in fright when I accost her. It is late and dark, and she is not a denizen of the night like I am. When she sees I am a woman too, her shoulders relax, the fear receding from her wary figure. She turns in my direction and I see that under the heavy green hood, she wears an evening dress of decent make, a shawl and a bag containing at the very least one magical item. Probably her focus. She is young, not a day over 18, I'd wager, and beautiful in a guileless and delicate sort of way. A pretty little sheep walking out, trying to grow. So easy to smother, so much life to draw. I will not. Instead, I take the demeanor of a bashful girl. I lower my head, avert my eyes slightly and force a tremble into my voice. Sorry miss. Are you, perchance, going to Carol Fletcher's reception too? At those words the young lady relaxes fully. She takes on a more protective air and does her best to exude self-confidence. With her shoulders squared and back straightened, she addresses me with a voice full of authority. That I am. I do not recognize you, are you new? Yes, I arrived in town recently. I came to introduce myself, but I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere, I add to reinforce my image as an airhead. Only an imbecile would take a wrong turn in a city that consists of squares. It is enough for the girl to take my arm and guide me forward. I sign for Urchin and John to follow me and be ready. As for Cruz and King, they are already hidden next to our destination. Their ethnicity makes them too easy to notice. She introduces herself as Camille, and I as Ariane. She asks me what I think of Alexandria. My opinion is that it contains far too many gang members, slavers, and chronic masturbators with far too much pride and not enough common sense to fill a tumbler, though arguably that last problem just solved itself. Instead of sharing this pearl of wisdom, I comment on the weather just like Sepp Hare would. After a few more reassurances from Camille's part that everything would go smoothly, we arrive. My companion takes a turn from the wide main street to pass through a gate to an inner courtyard. The path turns to white gravel while on either side of us, a small garden of roses and other fragrant essence charge the winter air with their heady perfume in a display of magical skill. I enjoy the feeling of pebbles crushing beneath my feet since, this time, I should not be too silent. The large oaken door is reinforced with alarm and resistance runes of a peculiar make. The enchantment is made from wood and freshly cut flowers. Although it will fade fast, it is no less potent for it. I stop at the threshold and gaze up at the young lady already up 2 stairs. Can I really just come in? I ask politely. Yes, of course. All are welcome in our community. I honestly doubt that. Nevertheless, the invitation is enough, and as I go by, the enchantments remain inert. I was invited, after all. Camille precedes me in an intimate antechamber where she hangs her hood. A set of stairs goes up by my left and a few closed doors lead to other parts of the house. On the white walls, paintings of severe women alternate with tapestries and landscapes. If it were not for the homey cluttering, the decorations would be impressive. With the presence of personal effects, the house feels like a middle ground between a home and a public office. Without hesitation, the girl leads me through a set of double doors to a grand salon, from whence I hear laughter and the murmurs of conversation. I am amazed at the size of the private receiving room. I did not expect so large a space inside of the city, and I find it obvious at first glance that great care has been given to its design. The ground is polished wood, the walls are painted white and blue with small windows. Instead, most of the natural light comes from a vast glass awning taking a good half of the roof and turning it into a solarium. Instead of flowers, however, Fletcher cultivates social connections. Clusters of witches converse casually in high-pitched voices, their colorful auras fluttering around them. A long banquet table occupies a side of the room, on which many dishes and desserts have been cut and prepared for the revelers. Brass cups and pitchers abound to allow them to wet their whistles for another round of gossip. If the variety of wares displayed is any indication, half of the food was brought here by guests. On the other side, a lone piano sits forlorn, for now, moved to make room for a large magical circle drawn in chalk, the work of several hours, at least. Camille waits for me to take in the sights with a knowing smile. She points at a trio at the far end of the room consisting of an old crone and a portly woman with a kind smile listening to a girl with black hair speaking with great animation. I focus and pick up a few words. It appears that she is wary of, and I quote, strange happenings in our fair city. Ah, to be this v. Strange happenings does not even begin to cover it. Thankfully, my mood recovered after the library debacle thanks to several factors. First, I poached Ricardo, who is on his way to Boston with the library's most useful tomes and his own dimensional research. Second, I had Urchin clean my pistols until they shone. Third, and the most important aspect, I do not have to take care of the library's cleanup. Not my job. Dear Lady Sephair will just have to find a way to dispose of several metric tons of rotting purple meat on her own. Those are Carol, Grace and Moonflower. She explains, you should go introduce yourself after they're done talking. Moonflower? I ask. She insists we call her that and not her birth name, Camille answers, embarrassed. It's Nastasia by the way. But you didn't hear it from me. Oh, juicy. Not 3 minutes in the room and I already know a pointless secret. She is the black dog. That means she is in charge of protecting us. Go to her if you have any security concerns. Oh, I will. She can be a bit abrasive. Don't let that deter you. She cares about us, even if her crusade against the social order can be a bit tiresome, at times. An idealist. That could be dangerous. That is all, Camille finishes and I notice that she is eyeing a group, probably her friends. Oh, Lucy is making eyes at me. Find me after you're done, and we will make the rounds together. Thank you Camille, I appreciate it, I tell her as a form of polite dismissal. A smile and wave and she is gone. I turn and delicately hold the shoulders of a woman before she can bump into me, then grab the plate she just dropped in surprise before it can land on the floor. Oh, I'm so sorry. God, I'm such a clod. Think nothing of it, I reassure her. This witch is dressed in an old-fashioned dress that has seen too many uses. She attempted to apply rouge with limited success and her frizzy brown hair is held in a messy bun. The overall impression is that of a complete bird brain. Her aura is particularly vivid, however, glowing around her in ever-moving abstract shapes. Thank you, dearie. I would not have forgiven myself if I had dropped my carrot cake. Would you like a slice? She generously offers. It smells delicious though, is that cinnamon? She half screams, it's my secret ingredient. I forcibly pull the plate from her nervous hands and deposit it on the table. As I do so, I notice that a few of the groups take a step away as we pass by. My companion is shunned by the group, despite her obvious power. An interesting development. This society gathers women from all backgrounds and I would naturally expect them to develop a pecking order. I did not imagine that it would mirror the social order to such a frightful extent, with the richest members clearly at an advantage here. I am almost disappointed. What is the difference between them and a butterfly appreciation group? Does competence not matter for something? My name is Ariane by the way. Oh, yes, manners. Sorry. I'm Violet. No need to apologize. Say, your aura is rather impressive. May I ask what your specialty is? The change of demeanor of my interlocutor is truly mesmerizing. She straightens and her chocolate eyes, which until then had flitted across the room, suddenly gain a penetrating intensity. The art of oniromancy deals with dreams and their applications. The dreamscape's malleability offers many opportunities ranging from training to long-range communication, she proudly declares. Then the moment is past and she deflates. Not that our sisters show much interest in it. Our society focuses on plant-based magic. Little effort is made exploring other techniques. And such a shame it is. I knew a man who could invite me to his dreams from a state away. The things he showed me, I reminisce as I think of Neshoba. He gave me back the sun, if only for a moment. Violet blushes a delicate shade of pink. Not that kind of experience. I chastise her, and she turns even redder. Sorry. I chuckle, and notice that the leadership trio finally noticed my presence. Nastasia, I mean Moonflower, looks my way with a frown. Ah, it appears I am being summoned. Remember that if your skills are not appreciated here, there are others who would give you the attention and respect you justly deserve. Leaving Violet behind with a shocked expression, I make my way across the floor. I suppose I let the vampire bleed out a bit there, at the end. I could not resist such a perfect poaching opportunity. The black dog walks forward to meet me first, blocking my way to the two others. Who are you? You shouldn't be here, this is a private party, she spits out. She is one of the few who wears a real gauntlet, and with a gesture, she sends a pulse of energy which I recognize as a detection spell. I close my aura completely, only allowing her a glimpse of the chill inside of me. You are not even one of us, she scoffs. An elitist. Indeed not, I reply neutrally, I am merely a messenger, come here to convey my lady's greetings. You have some gall, she exclaims. And what message would that be? The older woman asks while the portly witch wrings her hands in distress. By that time, the underlying tension of our exchange has been perceived by the well-attuned assembly, and they gather around us in a loose semicircle. My lady has claimed the District of Columbia for herself. She wants us to be good neighbors and cordially invites you and your representatives for an evening together, to discuss the modalities of our cohabitation. Should we care? Nastasia interrupts, her voice filled with arrogance. In answer, I give a light smile and move behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder and whispering in her ear. You really, I start, and move again to return to my starting position as she turns with a gasp. Really should, I finish, and release my aura. A frigid wave washes over the assembly with the power of a blizzard, pushing on the lights of their lives like under a thick blanket of snow. They yelp and recoil and huddle against each other in groups. Even their precious protector takes a step back. Silence descends upon the room as I stretch my arms and walk around with deliberate slowness. I do not even have to raise my voice. For years you have huddled in your little corner of the world, blind to the great happenings outside. Now, your lands are claimed by the Lady Sephaire of the Hastings. Under her benevolent supervision, resources and knowledge will flood into the city for those who deserve them. The protection she will grant you will shield the society from the depredations of predators, both mundane and otherwise. You have but to work with her. I stop and turn to face the leading trio, all of them having recovered. They are simply waiting for me to finish out of politeness. The winds of change have come to Alexandria, and it is time for you to choose. Will you embrace this change and the numerous opportunities it affords, or will you close your eyes and be swept away? You will have to decide for yourselves, I finish, my goal completed. Nastasia is the first to recover. She finally came to fateful realization. You are a vampire. We are vampires. Whispers erupt all around us, curiosity just as prevalent as fear. Those witches stayed isolated for far too long, content to exchange bomb recipes and snob each other, it seems. Many of them do not even know of my kind, their most dangerous predators. There should be a slang for magical bumpkins. I await the trio's reaction and I am not disappointed. While the crone is contemplative and the portly woman busy comforting her peers, the black dog acts first. She takes a step forward and invades my personal space once again. I already know that this one will not learn, will not bend. She will have to be removed. But not tonight, for I came as a guest and a messenger. I will never break those rules. I know a thing or two about you monsters. I know you drink blood and enslave humans, so you will forgive me if I call your negotiation for what it is, terms of subjugation. But you made a mistake in thinking that we would be easily cowed. This city has been a beacon of freedom since its very creation. I scoff at that. Beacon of freedom? A slaver town? You are the last, I reply. Nastasia's answer dies on her lips. I can tell when the pieces of the puzzle click in her mind and she finally figures out how much we already achieved. She does not show fear, however, but overwhelming anger. She bares her teeth in a rictus of rage. This isn't over, creature. I know of your kind's weaknesses. I do not know who invited you here, but this is my home and you are no longer welcome. Leave. The declaration smashes into me like a train. Have to get out. I move. Outside the reception room and through the warded gate which closes behind me. I land lightly on my feet in the garden. Oof. That was unpleasant. This is the first time someone rescinds their invitation while I am still in their home, and I did not expect it to be so effective. I felt like I was pushed by a mighty hand. The urge to leave was just as imperative as that to stay away from someone wielding a cross. Urchin had been waiting nearby. He rushes to my side when he notices me. Is something the matter? Someone just slammed the supernatural door in my face, otherwise I am fine, I reply. He scrunches his weasel face in confusion at my apparent lack of concern. Is that not bad, milady? It was the most likely outcome. Besides, I achieved my purpose tonight. You did? I look at my minion and consider an impromptu lesson. Why not? He is showing some significant progress and some outward signs of respect and loyalty. I might as well keep trying to lift him. Do you know what we really came here for? I ask, as we make our way across the empty street and jump on the roof. Jumping is better than dropping because I do not have to place my hands on my thighs to avoid indecency. I assume that you are not referring to Lady Safair's invitation to the city leaders. Urchin remarks. The invitation is only a pretext. What we are doing here is conquest, plain and simple. We are taking complete control over Alexandria, one group at a time, until Lady Sephaire remains as the undisputed ruler. And what is the tool we use? A blend of extreme psychological and physical violence. I smooth my dress, wipe a few tiles with a handkerchief and sit down. Below us, Cruz and King wait by a carriage and I give them the signal to hold. Once I am settled, I turn to Urchin who had patiently been waiting. Independent people wish to remain free by nature. This drive is a deeply embedded desire, an instinct, and that impulse is particularly strong on this land where being free is a matter of fact. The only way to override this desire for liberty so that men bend is to slowly subvert it. But you just spoke of fear. Urchin interrupts with a frown. I am pleased that he has been paying attention. If Lady Sephaire is the de facto ruler of the land, its inhabitants will eventually come to accept it as the way things are. The benefits of order and development she brings will slowly sway even the most stubborn dissenters. Eventually, she will be perceived as a benevolent ruler, akin to a mild government. Some of her current detractors may even turn into fervent supporters. Unfortunately, and as I mentioned, this will take time. Urchin sits by my side, pondering on my speech. Some lessons have stuck. Already, his posture and fashion sense have evolved from lowly lout to merely disreputable under my teachings. Perhaps the one who sired him did see something in him beyond mere entertainment. The only way to beat an instinct in a mob is to oppose it with another instinct. Fear will beat the lust for freedom and the resistance to change. It will keep the different factions in line until the new status quo is mostly accepted. I used fear of bankruptcy against the Federals and the fear of death against both the Mudmen and the Ratcatchers. The Mudmen leader, Wallace, agreed to meet Lady Sephaire because we easily slaughtered his old rival, not because we granted him more power. Remember this quote by Caesar, "It is better to be first of a village than second in Rome." Many of those you will interact with will sacrifice some power to gain autonomy. Like you, milady. Yes. Like me. As for the mages, I continue, the situation is different. I cannot simply murder talented spellcasters willy-nilly, or at least I would prefer to save it as a last resort. In their case, knowing our nature is already a strong fear motivator. We merely have to reveal ourselves to our foes for them to realize the danger they are in. Urchin muses on that last sentence, staring at the now locked entrance to the witch redoubt. They will still fight you if their latest reaction is any indication, he observes. Some of them will oppose us, yes. That is why I announced myself to the entire assembly instead of just their leaders. That way, the rank and file will pressure the leadership for a solution, and I expect many will favor a peaceful arrangement. They are not warriors, and they have much to lose in an open conflict. So we wait until they come to a consensus? Of course not. I did not bring the carriage for a midnight stroll. We will wait until the party finishes and abduct a pair who we will then bring to our warehouse. Let us see how long they last when we start kidnapping their members one by one. Afternoon, the day after. The shutters are closed, and the house is secured and still, I can feel it outside. The unforgiving rays beat on the masonry and smother the tiles on the roof in their baleful embrace, even now at the end of fall. It crushes me. The sun. My powers are mostly dormant and according to John, I look deathly sick. I feel sluggish and nervous. Oppressed. Threatened. All by this most natural of phenomena. And the most curious thing is that it does not care. No matter how terrified I am by a tiny dot of pale white light leaking between two planks, there is no intent behind it, no ill will. The terror I feel is not reciprocated, not even by disdain. To take my mind off things, I organize paperwork. The absorption of the rat catchers by the mud men is proceeding on schedule, however the fallout from the death of all the mages needs to be carefully managed lest groups like the Gabrielites catch wind of it. I do not need the complications. Defusing this issue only requires a few paws greased, a price I am willing to pay. I must still monitor the situation carefully. I am reading a report from one of our newest recruits when it happens. The downstairs door bangs open with a noise like thunder, and a rush of feet come in, soon followed by multiple gunshots. The loud detonations ring loudly in our enclosed space. I stand up. What? How? No time to think, I grab my pair of pistols and run to the stairs leading from the second floor to the first. Then, I stop at the landing when I see it. Sunlight, like a wall of fire, blocks my way down. The intruders left the door open. And here comes the first one, whom I recognize. He is one of the Mudmen's main enforcers, from Wallace's personal guard. I shoot him in the face. His body falls back. Another face replaces him. This is Jack, Wallace's protégé, the dandy young man I met in the old gang member's office. He gives me an apologetic smile and ducks. I aim down and realize that I left the powder and bullets in my office. Should I go get it, or just hold the line? Soon the decision is made for me. A furious aura emerges from below and the smug face of Nastasia appears, shield brandished before her. She smiles and moves up, mudmen foot soldiers packed tight behind her. Ah, a rebellion. How quaint. Nastasia's smile crumbles when I grab a cabinet and push it down. The heavy piece of furniture slides down the wooden stairs. Move, she yells, and a second later I hear a crash and a scream of pain. Mail, unfortunately. I use the diversion to run to the office and grab my gear. I do not have the time to change into something more protected, unfortunately. I rush back and reload my pistol with frustratingly slow speed. A quick look down lets me see two mudmen with muskets. I duck as they fire and shoot down one. The other leaves, screaming. She's here. Do it. Do what? I move back and White. Void. P. A. I. N. Pain. Unspeakable. Overwhelming. Agony. I scream, the sound like three voices together, too high-pitched to come from a human throat. I burn. There is movement, there is sound, something grabs me under my arms and lifts me up. It blocks the light. Blessed darkness. The rays of light encircle the man's shape like a deadly halo. He carries me. Up we go. Pain. Pain still. It pushes every sensation away, smothers every thought. The tiny orb of my consciousness is pressed on all sides by the red tide of that pain. Then, coolness. Liquid surrounds my body. The pain becomes less. It fades until I am an island in a sea of magma, not a rock inside of it. I can think. No longer on fire. Count to 10. Count to 20. Get the pain under control. Need to move. With my right hand, I push, find a wall of ceramic. Lifts. Find the edge. I am in a tub filled with water. Of course. I push myself up, pain flaring on my left side. I am in the bathroom. King is here, his long black beard plastered against his chest by wetness. I must have moved water around. The entire left side of my face, my arm and part of my chest and back are burnt. I use my right eye, the only one that still works, to take stock. Red bloody meat with black charred edges barely covered by strands of mangled fabric. It looks just as painful as it is. Were it not for the econ essence, I would be nothing but a screaming mess right now. Even then, the pain is paralyzing. John. I half choke, then hiss as the agony from my left cheek robs me of my words. Holding them back. Cruz. Dead, I think. He was on the first floor. I refrain from swearing. That was so sudden. It is. It is my fault. But no time for recriminations. We need to get out. I push myself and yelp in pain, falling back into the tube. Too much. I need a moment. We do not have a moment, King replies, his voice noticeably strained. Oh no. I look up and only now realize that he is bleeding. The stench of fire had overwhelmed my sense of smell. No, I whisper, get me a bandage, I shall. Stop, he interrupts. He grabs my right hand. His face is grayish, his eyes clouded. This is not the kind of wound us normal folks can come back from. His beard is not wet with water, but with blood. His chest. I am sorry, I say. What else is there? I cannot save him. He took the bullet carrying me away. He saved me. I find that I am genuinely sorry. I am not, he replies with a pained smile, live by the sword and all that. Now, come on. He lifts me up until I stand inside of the tub, with the intact part of my dress completely soaked. Your wounds are not closing. You need blood, might as well be mine before it all ends up on the ground. I say nothing as he drags me closer, against his muscular chest. At the last moment, he looks down at me and our eyes meet. We are even now, he declares. I nod. Farewell, David. He pulls me in so that I rest against him and bite down, drinking deep. We slowly fall to the ground until I am on top of him. When I pull back, he is dead. Power rushes into me from blood freely given by a brother in arms. His sacrifice gives me a sorely needed infusion of vitality, and when I stand up, some of the wounds no longer look so frightful. I am still a maimed mess. I slowly drag myself to the door and go through. As I do, an impact rattles the shutters which resist. Ah, they must have punched through the second-floor windows and shutter with bullets to let sunlight in. It really took just a trickle to hurt me so. Fortunately, The third floor contains the passage to the vault where Urchin and I retire. All the exits are padded with metal and even the roof is reinforced. I find John on the landing with his giant crossbow. He winces when he sees me and quickly returns his attention to the stairs. Below us, the mudmen slowly creep across the ground, searching. They are in no rush, as it will take at least another hour before the sun sets. I limp to my only remaining servant. I have recruited a few new helpers over the past few days, only the Watcher knows how many still live. Finally, the intruders make their way to the edge of the stairs. I hear several female voices arguing over who goes first. After a while, a woman named Gloria wins the honor of being the first to assault our position by virtue of having the strongest shield. A few moments later, our enemies yell and charge. The first to appear is a beautiful young woman with curly blonde hair. She raises her gauntlet and the air shimmers with her power. John pulls the trigger. His heavy silver bolt pierces the shield as if it were made of paper and propels the woman back. Her incantation dies on her lips as the projectile pins her against the floor. The war cries die as abruptly as they started. Two voices scream in distress. Gloria feebly tries to grab the bolt. She moans and coughs blood. Tears fall from her eyes in long trails that end in the expanding pool of red beneath her prone form. She extends a hand to her friends who dare not enter the field of vision of John, who already reloaded. It takes a solid 20 seconds for the woman to finally choke to death. Eventually, her pallid form struggles weaken then cease. The voices below cry, argue and yell for a while in a debate that I fail to follow. The pain continues. I normally heal quickly, but between the source of the wound and the hour, I suspect it will be some time until I am whole again. In the meanwhile, every step is a nightmare. My focus slips inevitably until I manage to shake myself awake once more. It appears the deliberations are at an end. Nastasia uses a spell to levitate her friend's body upward, then to the side to recover it. Her voice surges then, spiteful and confident. "Stay there then, you monster." As one, her group leaves. I hear the clatter of their footsteps going down. John and I stay unmoving for a while. Time is on our side. Or is it? I finally realize why they were willing to go. If they cannot kill us the old-fashioned way, they are more than willing to resort to drastic measures. The house is on fire. The perfect crime. The mudmen control the firefighters, who will come too late to save the house. Tragic. Fortunately, I am not completely out of options yet. "John, listen carefully," I start. The big man turns his ugly mug to me and I can see that the deaths of his friends affect him greatly, yet as always, he remains unflappable in this time of crisis. His attention turns entirely on me, ready to get his orders. "Go down to my office, find the key in my desk's left drawer, take it, open the right drawer, take its contents, then put everything into my bag next to the stairs leading to the ground floor. Then run back up and open that window," I say, as a point to the one closest to the neighbor's house. "Climb up and jump on the neighbor's roof, the one with slightly redder tiles." I remember. "Hide next to the chimney. Do not look down, do not search for me. Wait for nightfall, then look towards the garden. Wait for my signal." "I understand." "Good. Now, go." John takes off with a speed few would expect from a man of his size. I open the passage to the vault as the first wafts of smoke permeate the air, closing and locking it behind me. The descent along the stone shaft is a long one, alone, in an isolation that even the inferno outside cannot breach. Mistakes, 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 always more mistakes on my part. King is dead. Cruz is dead. The mudmen turned against me. All because of my strategy. And if I had taken more time, the gangs would have thrown the city into an all-out war. And if I had not warned the witch of my existence, instead taking them out one by one, I would have forfeited any chance at diplomacy as requested by Lady Sephaire. I did not expect the two groups to work together, considering one is a traditionalist Christian group and the other is made of witches. It will always be like that, will it not? I will always miss key information, underestimate one foe and overestimate the other. Mortals will always surprise me with their ability to twist their words and beliefs to suit their ends. I will always be the straightforward girl, better at planning a project than at manipulating nations from the shadows. Not like Lady Sephaire. Am I too stupid to rule over a state? No, that is not the right question. The right question is, can I afford not to? And the answer is no. I reach the end of the shaft and drop down into the small room in which my sarcophagus lies. Urchin still slumbers away in his own coffin like shelter, oblivious to the recent tragedy. I stare at my gear, set against the wall, and realize that I will never manage to put on the armor. I would need to peel off the dress first. I look at my arm. Some of the skin has started to regrow, the rest of the flesh is still raw muscle tissue covered in pinkish fluids and black blood. I feel a strange separation between my cold mind, and the pain, horror and disgust of the more human part of me. Is this really what I am made of? All that meat? I shake my head to clear my thoughts. Too much has happened, and the pain has not receded. I find it hard to think. I sit heavily against the wall. I just need a bit of time. Ever so slowly, the wounds close and I can finally open my left eye. My mouth is sticky with king's blood. I must have made a mess. Time passes. Night falls. As darkness blankets the world, I can feel myself again. Vigor returns to my limbs and sharpness to my spirit, forcing me to acknowledge, understand and plan. In front of me, Urchin's casket opens. He freezes when he notices me. Milady? There is no time, Urchin, we have a dance to finish. I unlock the trap door and push a lever. Through a clever use of pulleys and the power of vampiric strength, several 100 pounds of steel shift up and to the side. I pop my head through the opening to find quite the reception. You were right, sister, the rat had a way out, a cold voice sounds to my left. Come on out, vampire, the voice of Nastasia replies from the front. I pull myself out and slowly crawl out. The wounds are mostly closed and still I can tell from the assembly's visceral disgust that they are quite ghastly. Nastasia's mouth turns down into a sneer as she takes in my poor appearance, including my blood-covered face. I stand in the middle of a circle, with a witch at each of the cardinal points. The spell is a simple shield aimed inward that allows their own casts to travel through, giving them an undeniable advantage. Behind them, a dozen Mudmen gang members spread in a half-circle, holding weapons and crosses. At their head, I find Wallace and his protégé Jack, armed to the teeth. Well, not so haughty, are you, vampire? I bet you did not expect that. That certainly came as a surprise, I admit. Speaking remains uncomfortable, though nowhere close to the torture that it used to be. I turn my gaze to Wallace. The grizzled gang leader's gaze is filled with disgust and hatred. I assume he found me. Nastasia smiles smugly, a hand on her hip. Is she gloating? Yes, she is. I was right to seek the help of Alexandria's underbelly to track down your location. Imagine my surprise when not only did they know you, but they were also quite happy to lend a hand. I knew it. I knew you were a monster, Wallace spits. Oh please, I retort, you are only too happy to conduct a little coup now that we placed the gangs at your knees. I can help the Lord and help myself, it's the American way, he replies with a shrug. Nastasia interrupts us, apparently out of patience. Enough of this. You made a mistake coming here, but I will be magnanimous. If you tell me where Lady Sephaire's resting place is and swear an oath to leave the country, we will let you go. Moonflower, one of the other women, a slender brunette with eyes reddened by grief asks. I am sorry, Mary. We must place the interests of the community before our desire for vengeance. Finding her master is more important than killing her. Gloria would understand, I am sure. The other witch seems troubled but, in the end, she relents. Is that it? I ask. Nastasia frowns. What do you mean? She replies cautiously. You killed at least 2 of my men, and who knows how many of my newest recruits. Are you not going to demand that I forfeit vengeance? Do you think so little of me? What do creatures like you care about? I do. I do care, I interrupt her, and start pacing the ground. The blood of David King sings in my essence, filling me with a sort of energy that I had not felt from a mundane mortal before. Most of my skin has regrown. Some of the mudmen's eyes widen in surprise and a few even take some steps back, clutching their crosses with panicked fingers when they realize how quickly I recovered. Quite a few do not react at all, as expected, and I force myself not to smile. David King and Timothy Cruz. I bought David from a slave owner in Kentucky 2 years ago at the request of his late father who also died fighting by my side. He was proud of his beard. He was a devoted friend to other members of his squad. His favorite food was baby back ribs. Timothy Cruz, a loner of the Creek Nation. Competent hunter and tobacco lover. His brother still works for me. Nastasia narrows her eyes. I can tell that I am making her uncomfortable by humanizing her victims. She probably never killed before. You truly do not understand us. We care about mortals, friends and foes, and we know that they can still surprise us. That is why we take precautions to account for our own mistakes, such as making sure an organization stays loyal. Isn't that right, Jack? Ah, the beautiful moment when the bear trap closes on the unexpected leg, snapping it between its steel jaws. I am so wary of underestimating the mages that I sometimes forget that the sin of pride is not just ours to commit. Time slows to a trickle as I make a hand gesture and turn to my cattle. I bit quite a few people over the previous days as an insurance, and many of them are here tonight. Jack smoothly lifts his pistol and pulls the trigger on the brunette witch, killing her instantly. In the same motion, he unsheathes a knife and buries it deep in the chest of the gang leader by his side. The look of utter betrayal on Wallace's face as he falls is absolutely priceless. Then John obeys my signal and a monstrous bolt goes through the witch to my left, the one who had called me a rat. She falls without a scream. All hell breaks loose. With only 2 witches maintaining it, the spell wavers and breaks. A solid half of the late Wallace's personal guard turns on the other with single-minded mania. With surprise on their side, they cut down their foes with ease. I turn and kill the witch at my back by burying my hand in her heart. Pointless, yet cathartic. I recognize my guide Camille's surprised face just as her blood splatters on the ground, then I shrug and return my attention to Nastasia just as she lifts an arm to cast. She, too, displays great anguish, to my delight. She looks quite shocked when she realizes her gauntlet is gone. Mine now, Urchin's voice whispers by her side. I was not sure if he could pull it off, now I know. Make sure none have escaped, then you may feed, I order him. He rushes after the fleeing form of the last surviving mudmen not under my command. As for Nastasia, she falls on her knees, toppled more by utter shock than by despair. I walk to her and bend a bit, so that our heads are quite close. Relying on compromised assets was your first mistake. The second was to face me after dark, I continue as I pull the gauntlet I previously used in the library, now part of my arsenal. I had this and an enchanted dagger to go through that amateurish shield of yours and I did not even have to use it. Wait, please, I get it. You win. I surrender. And the third mistake, I interrupt, was to expect mercy from a vampire. I drink her dry, with the house still burning behind me. It does not taste like victory, not even like vengeance. I prepared a contingency plan in case I was betrayed and activated it. The precautions I took granted me victory tonight. I am sure that Lady Sephaire would not have had to face a rebellion. We are only here tonight because I lack finesse and subtlety. I am still a bumbling child to the lords and ladies. With this sad realization, my mind busies itself with the incredible task of managing the consequences of this incident. I will have to calm down officials, grease palms, relocate, reorganize the gang leadership and, more importantly, recover and give the last rites to the remains of my allies. When I am done feeding, I drop Nastasia's lifeless corpse and gather the remains of the 4 other witches in a pile. I do not stop as Jack comes to my side with the other controlled mud men by his side. Did I do well, mistress? I face him. His loyalty to Wallace was strong enough that even now, within my thrall, the grief he feels still wars with his unnatural loyalty. Of course, you did well. He betrayed me tonight, who knows when he would betray others. I lie. Serenity returns to him, and with it, inaction. Such is the price of creating cattle. It is fortunate that Wallace did not rely on him being too independent yet. As for me, I have a delivery to make. Nastasia's home. I open a panel through the sunroof and drop the lifeless corpses on the ground one by one. There are plenty of servants here, so they should be found promptly. I am taking a risk by making the threat so obvious, but to be honest, I am tired of this entire farce. Let Lady Sephaire play with her city. I am done with it. As I head back, I contemplate how close I came to death earlier this afternoon. It reminds me of my own fragility. I believe that my demise is inevitable. I am no immortal monster like my sire, who was unbeatable long before Darius turned his gaze on Greece's city-states. Today's world is chock full of powers vying for dominance or extermination. Many heroes and fighters have already tried to slay me before I even ruled over more than a toothpick. They have failed. So far. Time has lost its grasp on me and they will never stop coming. It can only end one way. At some point, my luck will run out, my intuition will fail me, and someone will finally succeed. I will turn to ashes. Hopefully, not too soon. Carol Fletcher got my message and I have no doubt that she will cooperate. It will soon be time for me to meet Lady Sephaire. Washington, 2 nights later. The venue Lady Sephaire chose for her meeting is the top floor of an elegant gentleman's club she recently took over. The guests are led up through the deserted building by a butler exuding disapproval at the uncouth louts defiling his august halls with their unwashed bodies, grimy clothes, and rancid breaths. The gaping wastrels are then invited to sit at a long table in a large reception room upon which refreshments have already been served. When we come in, some of the rowdier ones are quaffing shooters of 20-years-old bourbon without ceremony like the absolute degenerates they are. Besides myself, Sephaire brought a protection detail of men in top hats and dark suits, all of whom are wielding canes. Separate, they could be any upper-class gentleman out for a stroll. Together, they look exactly like what they are, high-end enforcers. They silently take position at every corner of the room, in front of both entrances and along the open windows. As for the woman herself, she looks positively enchanting in a diaphanous green dress that reveals the curve of her alabaster shoulders. Our host walks forward and claps twice. Immediately, the room falls silent. When the new Lady of Washington speaks, she does so in a smooth and melodious voice that lulls me, rolls me into its rhythm until listening to her words becomes the most natural thing to do. Good evening, gentlemen, welcome to my humble establishment. My name is Sephaire Hastings and I cannot express how delighted I am to see you all here gathered tonight. A shrew. The new boss is a shrew, one of the leaders erupts. He bares his teeth, 2 of them black, and stands up with fury. Oh dear. What Sephaire does next is an exercise in control. She lifts the hem of her dress and runs behind the man with a speed that is just at the limit of what humans should be able to do. Too surprised by the suddenness of her reaction, the would-be rebel only manages to turn his head slightly before the diminutive blonde woman grabs it and smashes it down on his chair's frame. Once, twice, thrice she strikes, and with the last impact, a dreadful snap resonates throughout the hall as the man's neck bones shatter. Sepher drops the dying man, who collapses face first on the table. Once more, she displayed just the amount of strength that a human could reasonably wield, but twice the savagery. The lady calmly removes her white gloves, which she hands to one of her bodyguards, while another fetches replacements from an inner pocket. She studiously puts them on. In the ensuing quiet, the pathetic rattles of the paralyzed criminal the only perceivable noise. It takes him a good 20 seconds to choke to death. His mouth opens and closes like that of a beached fish, while his bulging eyes search the room for a salvation that none can grant. Two of the guards grab the man under the shoulders as he takes his dying breath. Good idea, less of a mess. Sepher makes sure the gloves fit before resuming her speech in the exact same pleasant tone. Please, kindly do not speak out of turn. Now, where was I? Oh yes. I am so glad you all decided to join us tonight. I have grand projects for your fair city, and I am sure that by working together, we will achieve all our dreams. Isn't that exciting? The hardened felons mumble and bob their heads in respectful assent. Nothing like breaking spines like twigs to make a memorable first impression, it seems. Over the next week, I will be meeting each one of you in private to better understand your position and your strengths, and see which responsibility you can be granted. We have a lot of work to do and many rewards to reap, so let us all do our best together, yes? The barely veiled threat coupled with the promise of power and money smooth the mood of the visitors, which turns contemplative. How can they refuse when they have been presented with the alternative? In short order, the meeting is adjourned, and I follow her to her office without a word. She closes the door behind us as I take in her workspace. Sepher chose a corner office with a view on the Capitol building's cupola half hidden behind tall trees. A large desk of dark wood has been placed below the window offering said view for additional symbolism. As expected of Sepher, a corner of the office is dedicated to tea and its consumption. What does surprise me is the windowless wall currently covered with maps teeming with pins and colored notes. I mechanically aim for the tea table, but Sepher stops me with a gesture. Hold on, Ariane. Before we sit down, I wanted to ask you something. Yes. How many bloodlines have you consumed so far? The non sequitur catches me off guard. I count in my head. I have the Lancaster essence several times over, the Cotty's essence from Jimena, the Natalie's essence from that rogue 30 years ago. Nami shared the Econ resilience with me. Oh, obviously I have the Devourer essence. Who else? I have the Amaretta from Aisha, Ehrenwald from Ogotai and Vanheim from Urchin. That one is still inactive for now. I am still missing 6. 8. Am I correct in assuming that you do not have Hastings' essence? You are. Wait, are you implying what I think you are? She nods. When she next speaks, the coldness in her voice would chill mortal listeners. To me, it only means that she is dropping the mask. You have proven your worth as an ally beyond my expectations by completing your tasks so thoroughly, she begins. I wince in reaction. Oh, do not be so harsh on yourself. The librarians could not be saved, and the gangs would not have bent without bloodshed. It only took you less than 3 weeks to complete the conquest and bring me its remaining leaders. Do you know that the witches practically begged me to protect them from you? She smiles at the memory, her thin fangs displayed in a show of greed and gluttony. Then, her expression returns to seriousness. I was sorry to hear about your losses. Feel free to replenish the ranks of your servants from the local population. As long as you do not go overboard, I will not begrudge you your share of the spoils. Now concerning the matter at hand, you have proven yourself to be everything I hoped for. That is why I shall offer you my blood. I stare, askance. My surprise is simply too much. I am of course grateful, I reply, but I have to ask. Why? Why would I help you gain power? Do you know what will happen to this land soon? Heir. I have not considered the fate of the nation. I was busy staying alive. Sepher grins, as if I had told a joke. Fair enough. In the short term, this territory will be partitioned into areas of influences belonging to their respective houses, independent from the clan or not. The Coddies already control much of the southeast from Charleston to New Orleans, Florida, and beyond. The Roland are more concentrated in the northeast, and the Lancaster are struggling to get back into the game. Yarrick is headed to Mexico. Even your precious Tauren is working on creating a Dvor enclave. Everybody is scrambling for land right now. Including you. Indeed. In this race, we newcomers are at a significant disadvantage. That is why we should stick together. As promised, I will help you claim Illinois, and then we may start solidifying our respective positions for the next great game. Can you guess what it will be? I already considered it many times. The old continent vampires will try to gain control. Sepher smiles like a proud parent. Precisely. So far, the presence of Constantine has been an effective deterrent against any heavy-handed attempt at conquest. In time, it will not suffice. Do you know that even with our coming, there are less than 20 lords here? It matters. It does indeed. When it comes to true war, not those regulated skirmishes, but true vampire war, only lords matter. Anything below is but fodder. It might be hard to understand for someone who has never seen a warlord fight. I understand. You do? She asks. Yes, I saw Lord Suarez take out a knight squad. He dismembered them. Then you understand. Mortal conflicts are resolved through several factors such as numbers, quality, strategy, and determination. For us, battle-trained lords and ladies are the deciding factor, and we have precious few of them. We need another deterrent. You mean me? Yes, I mean you. It took you a mere 3 decades to become a master and you are still sane. This speaks of a natural ability to grow as well as the means and willingness to devour your foes. If you are a lady by the time they are ready to come, they shall have to think twice before committing to the task. I hesitate at that. I am not some invincible champion, you know. I object, but Sepher just shakes her head. I have seen you spar with Tauren. Ah. Your speed and strength are already above the average master and you are still so young. And your style. Marvelous. I was told that it was rough. Yes, as expected from someone with only a few decades of experience. Do you know why Tauren did not try to change it then? Why he merely helped you hone it through rigorous combat? My style is good. I ask, surprised. Of course. Your movements are the closest I have seen to that of a rogue in my entire existence. I gape at that revelation. A rogue? I fight like a rogue. This does not make sense. You are much more precise, cunning and unpredictable than a real rogue, of course. In truth, it might become your greatest asset yet. How so? Sepher pauses to gather her thoughts and resumes her pacing. Many of our kind's fiercest warriors were combatants in their mortal lives. They learned how to fight and move using their bodies to the best of their abilities, and this experience, those habits, are conserved during the change. Most train with sword, or spear, or mace, under the strict tutelage of the best master at arms they can find. It is a mistake. I think I am beginning to follow. You learned to fight after you became a vampire, therefore you fought with your new body using new instincts. There are no unfortunate habits or reflexes for you to forget. I must protest. Surely, a sword master at the top of their art would be more dangerous. Not so, for only when nature and style are one can a vampire achieve true fighting mastery. Some of the knight masters at arms have succeeded. For now, your own controlled chaos is already a terrible weapon against one used to traditional fighting styles. You have but to continue on your path, see what works for you. All existing schools were started by one person. I do not believe I am that kind of genius. Not at wielding weapons, perhaps, but at being a vampire. I do not reply to that. She is not the first to credit me with such a strange achievement. So, Ariane, I will help you, and when the time comes, perhaps we will keep our kingdoms and then, who knows, she asks with a mischievous smile. She then pulls her sleeve up and extends her arm. Her aura is concealed, the natural state of those of us with great control. Despite her best efforts, I can still feel her underlying tension. The act of offering blood is one of exposed vulnerability. It goes against our very instincts. I step forward and take the arm without ceremony. I know the experience is uncomfortable for her, and hurry a bit out of politeness. I lick once to prevent pain and bite down. Sunlight hits my hood from the side. It feels like standing next to an open oven. Even turning my head is an impossible task. She says it will become easier, in time. She says my sense of taste will return. She says many things and I do not like it. I was playing, testing my limits on those supposedly honorable bachelors and faithful husbands. It was good fun seeing them reveal their true colors and base instincts, but I did not mean to attract her attention. I love her, of course. She is so great. But I do feel like I was robbed of my decision. I managed to deflect the tip of the man's sword before he buries it into my chest. I manage a riposte, but the enemy master slaps it away with frustrating ease. He pushes me back until my back hits the table. I roll over it and send a silver plate flying at the man's head. The attack buys me a few instants. It is enough to sprint past him and throw another plate. As I go through the door, I collapse a cupboard towards my pursuer. He kicks it, but the heavy piece of furniture is blocked by the narrow frame. I turn around. The man stops. Well done. You are getting better at this. We will start working on manipulation next session. We move to the kitchen. The Rosenthal Battle Master is here to teach us how to survive and escape. Our relative weakness would make us easy prey to other vampires in a straight fight, and that is why I vow never to be caught in one. I pull back and lick the wound clean, then lead the exhausted Sepher to her chair before sitting opposite her. I close my eyes and within moments, I am inside of my mind palace. In the stone square where the statues of my conquest are gathered, her form kneels. I return to the real world to find a visibly excited Sepher pouring me black tea. She is still weakened, and yet her enthusiasm is catching. You can use our powers, my dear, can you not? I feel a new instinctive way to appear more mortal, move more humanly, and even bring a pink sheen to my cheeks by expanding a bit of power, an ability I can surely develop with a bit of practice. There is something else as well, though as expected, her main ability eludes me. Yes, although not at the same level as you. I will never be able to walk under the sun, for example. Indeed? A pity. Nevertheless, please try the tea now. I pick up the steaming cup and dip my lips in the infusion. The warm liquid rolls on my tongue, the taste light and pleasant. Taste. I can taste it. I can swallow. I allow myself to smile as I put the cup down. Good. Good. Hm. We all have one dish that we relish above all others. Would you care for some cake? My mind rebels at the very thought of anything solid. I fear I am still limited to liquids, I inform my host. Her smile does not lose any of its strength. Oh, I am sure we will easily find. I interrupt her by raising my hand. I sniff the air like a bloodhound. There, this smell. The strong and unmistakable perfume of roasted beans, a powerful accent and a deep fragrance. Amazing. Is this coffee I smell? I ask with unbridled excitement. The deep, heart-wrenching sigh of abject betrayal that lifts my companion's dainty chest speaks of a disappointment beyond words. It takes only a week for me to wrap up everything and then return to Boston with John and a few promising administrators. As for the others' recent hires, it turns out that Jack, Wallace's protégé and my agent, has managed to save their lives when the mudmen and witches took over the warehouse to rescue the hostage. Most of them decide to stay in their home city under the employ of Sepher. The few who do not are given the funds and means to reach Marquette. As soon as I arrive, I leave John in the arms of his worried, tender half Gladys and have King and crew's personal effects sent back home. David King had no family left, unfortunately. Solveig ends up in my service once again and I find myself in the same room as before, now sadly empty. It will take Torin another week to finish his work and return. Nami traveled away to catch a giant squid, and Jimena is off on some confidential night business which leaves me without company. As a result, I make some efforts to get acquainted with the manor's population. Melitone, Constantine's servant, happens to be around and I take the time to thank her for her assistance. The bubbly woman dismisses my thanks immediately and embarks on a rant against the speaker, during which I learn that they are twins and that she does not hold him in high regard. I end up spending a few afternoons with her as we are both painters. Melitone is strange. She moves almost too well for a mortal. With Wilhelm of the Ehrenwald, the steward, I learn how to take better care of Métis. Although he is busy as the butler and master of ceremony, he still takes the time to visit the stables at least once per night and I manage to learn quite a few tricks from him. For example, nightmares love having their teeth brushed, something that Métis now demands during every visit. I also learn that nightmare teeth brushing is a spectator sport and that participants are encouraged to have a way to regrow fingers. The other thing I learn is the nightmare's fondness for having sweet grass dipped in their drinking water. My big pony will gaze at the infusing liquid with unwavering fascination, sometimes using her nose to stir the concoction. It then occurs to me that nightmares are deceptively malicious tea drinkers with a monotonous, meat-heavy diet. Therefore, nightmares are English. The revelation helps me understand and tolerate Métis' snorting antics with renewed patience. Wilhelm also helps me repair the blue ethereal shawl Nami had gifted me. It had suffered from the fire and had been reduced to a single strip. With his help, I restore the ghostly living fabric to its former glory. Besides Wilhelm, I also get to know a few visitors from various clans, including Roland exiles who are the first members of their clan not to attempt to kill or capture me. I also spend some time with Constantine's secretary and assistant, a mousy woman who happens to be a Rosenthal renegade. They are apparently extremely rare. The woman, whose name is Sophia, carries a blade everywhere. It is her refusal to forfeit violence and bend to the clan's rigid laws and hierarchy that prompted her self-exile. She is only too eager to test my mettle. Unfortunately, the fight is extremely one-sided. She relies on her memory and mind to analyze patterns and compare them to the styles she already studied in order to gain an edge. Apparently, my own style is far too chaotic and unpredictable for her to succeed. Add to that my superior reach, and even without using much of my speed and strength, she still doesn't stand a chance. We practice for a few hours, mostly for her benefit, though I manage to become familiar with different schools of fighting which she imitates with mechanical precision. When I mention developing her own style, she agrees with me in principle, but observes that she has difficulties doing so as she simply lacks the mental flexibility. I find that I enjoy myself more than I expected. During that week, I also receive a few messages. Ricardo successfully arrives in Marquette with my newly looted tomes. He and Merritt finally broker an uneasy peace after bickering over laboratory equipment. My financial assistance in creating 2 separate labs proved vital. I also learn from my witchy deputy that the White Cabal moved in successfully, and that they have so far respected their arrangement to the letter. They were quite surprised to find a completely independent practitioner on my land. In a worryingly short amount of time, my poor friend received 1 duel and 3 marriage invitations, all of which she answered with extreme prejudice. I stock up on coffee beans, to Solveig's complete disbelief. Finally, I pay Urchin. So far, all I had given him was pocket money on top of a blood supply. I did pillage a few resources from Alexandria and decide to give the Vanheim courtier a bonus, as a gesture of kindness. To my surprise, he decides to spend most of it on clothes. I direct my minion to Wilhelm and possibly the help of the tailor Gunther Good who had so masterfully renewed my wardrobe. Only a true expert could salvage the situation anyway. To my delight, the work is accepted, and Urchin soon parades the manor in a well-cut grey suit that fits him like a glove. The Vanheim reject is almost respectable now that he no longer wears rags. And because he substituted his beret with a nice bowler hat. And since he takes regular baths. And combs his hair. Also, he walks, instead of skulking. And his back is straight, which means he does not look like he is constantly plotting some unsavory plan that involves sneaking into women changing rooms. The improvement to his diction helps as well. He even stopped leering. Well. All in all, I would say that I did good work. He is almost no longer a rescue. With everything going reasonably well, for once, I hire the help of Salim and officially submit my claim to the state of Illinois. There are no specific rules concerning this sort of claim. Constantine remained purposely vague when listing the requirements in his laws. In order to be eligible, one must demonstrate sufficient martial power and have the means to control their territory. The rest is up to the speaker, who is free to accept or not depending on if he believes the candidate has contributed or will be contributing to the community. I wiped out a Gabrielite base and an actual horde of Wendigos. That has to count for something. On the 2nd day of December and 3 days before Torin is set to return, I am finally summoned to the progenitor's office. Winter has come to Boston. A heavy cover of snow blankets the entire bay, including the manor. The air grows crisp and pleasant and the nights long and productive. I sometimes ride through the pristine cover of white powder shining like crushed diamond when I successfully coax Métis out. Tonight is different. I knock on the door leading to the speaker's antechamber and Sophia ushers me in without fuss. He is expecting you, she says quietly. I must admit that for all his flaws, Constantine does not keep people waiting. House Nirari. Come in, he mutters as he finishes reading a report. Once I am sat, Constantine tucks the piece of paper away and removes a file from one of his many drawers. He opens it with slow and precise movements to remove my petition. I realize that the other documents contained look like the intelligence report he put away. He has been keeping an eye on me. Constantine gazes at me from above his hawkish nose, assessing. I wait. The memories associated with this place surge and for a moment, I am tempted to pull on my fingers and check they are fine. Sometimes, it is hard to believe that I was tortured not 2 months ago. It feels like an eternity. I suppose that I should be grateful. I have no objection with your claim, he says softly. You have the means to control your state. You have, without a doubt, the martial might. You have proven yourself reliable and helpful on several occasions, including when you rid us of pests. You even have an unusual network of allies and acquaintances, as the trial proved. I sense a but, I reply with annoyance. The speaker nods. You have taken no steps to control the Great Lakes region, the location with the most potential, and this gave others an opportunity to make a conflicting claim. I was about to notify you of this fact to give you an opportunity to compete when you submitted your own petition, which is fortunate. Now, I find myself in the unenviable position of having to decide between 2 houses. What? I sputter with uncontrolled outrage, who would dare? Constantine raises a tired hand to stop my furious tirade before it can even begin. Since a land can only have one king, I will figure out a way to select the most deserving party through a contest. You will be notified when the matter is decided. As to your question, the competing house is House Cotties. Shock. Horror. Betrayal. Constantine smirks bitterly. His parting remark stings more than I anticipated. You have had your first taste of true vampire politics. Welcome to my world, Ariane. Lord Siren will see you now, the voluptuous courtier announces with no trace of condescension. She leads me to an intimate office in warm tones and closes the door behind me. Lord Siren stands up and bows while I respectfully curtsy. It helps that I took the time to calm down. Incidentally, a pair of training dummies from the manor's armory were mercilessly savaged by some barbarian with an axe. If anyone asks, I was otherwise engaged at that time. Somewhere else. It hurts that the Lord did not change at all since the time he and I allied back at the fortress. It is with his assistance that Jimena extracted me from the clutches of the Lancaster. He was well rewarded for his efforts with comprehensive details on Lancaster economic assets, a condition of his assistance. In retrospect, I was incredibly naive to think of us as allies. Lord Siren looks as good as the first time I saw him. He still has the same deep blue eyes and curly dark hair around a handsome face, and this time I can tell that his imposing muscle mass marks him as a brawler more than a fencer. Or at least he was before he was changed. Good evening, Lord Siren, I hope you are well. And you too, Ariane. Please, take a seat. I do so, hold my hands before me and start immediately. Is there any way you could withdraw your claim on Illinois? A pause. Lord Siren considers me with widened eyes and chuckles, the old vampire equivalent of a full belly laugh. Ah, little one, your honesty is refreshing. I thank you for that. As for your question, I shall answer it with candor. You and I are after the same thing, therefore, we will compete for it. One of us will get it and the other will not. Such is our way. There must be a reason why you would be after this land in particular, I reply. Yes, the land itself. My faction within the local Cotties clan is looking to expand, nothing less, nothing more. I see, I note without much surprise. An agreement at that point was a long shot to begin with. I can tell that Lord Siren is considering a reply, and so remain quiet until he decides on what to say. I do not have to wait long. Since we have been on good terms for so long, I feel the need to speak plainly. May I? He politely requests. You may. The Cotties branch I lead does not do this to spite you personally, we are merely rushing to consolidate assets while the current race is still at its beginning. To be direct, we are wary of Lady Sephaire, your ally, and thus moving against your interests proved logical from our perspective. You may see her as only one amongst many, as do most of you who were born on this land, and you would be sorely mistaken. Siren relaxes in his chair as his eyes grow distant. I opposed her quite a few times when she was fighting on the side of Mask. Do you know what differentiates one of us from a true villain? I do not react, indicating that he should continue. Villains have no bottom line. It might sound like a trite remark, but rest assured that it captures the essence of the problem. We are monsters. We kidnap, torture, and assassinate without batting an eye, for that is our nature, and despite all of this, we still have a code, limits to how far we will go and who we will target. Sephaire does not share such qualms. Do you know why she truly left the old world behind? I did request a briefing on her from the Rosenthal, and I also caught a glimpse of her memories when she shared her essence with me. She needed a fresh start. Her political situation was growing untenable. Correct, yet incomplete. The reason why she ended up in dire straits is not through outside machinations but as a direct result of her own actions. She was marginalized within her own faction for attempting to assassinate progenitor Hastings' husband. Out of spite, I may add. I stare at Lord Siren, waiting to see if this is some sort of joke. There is no definite proof, of course, or she would have been flayed one layer at a time, leaving her head and heart intact until the very last moment. She was still strongly suspected, so much that Hastings herself had no choice but to make her a pariah. She provoked her exile through her own hand, or at the very least, as a consequence of her reputation. And still, you elected to throw your lot with her, despite our warnings. Siren smiles magnanimously. Your regrettable decision is not something I wish to hold against you in the long run. We may appear at odds right now, however this sad state of affair between us does not preclude a future agreement. We are not so heartless as to deny you your city. An arrangement could be made. For an instant, I am almost tempted to seek an agreement. It does not last. Devourers do not give up before the game has even started. Lord Siren should have known, just as he should not underestimate the resources I can pull to get what I want. We merely find ourselves at opposite sides of the chessboard, he continues. As always, this is not personal. It is always personal for the one being attacked, I retort. You speak of her deviousness and lack of limit as if you were incapable of it yourselves. I cannot help but note that you did not attempt any sort of communication on the issue. Instead, you opened the hostilities without giving me the basic courtesy of an ultimatum. Now you stand here with a smile as if your maneuver constituted some sort of harmless prank. It does not. I click my talons on my chair and force myself to stop lest I start raising my voice. I must not display any anger. This is a game, only a game, whose rules have stayed unchanging for centuries. In the end, Lord Siren is correct. There is nothing personal about his clan's scheme because there is nothing personal between us. We are neither friends nor even allies, and that makes us fair game for each other. We will now compete, with the loser graciously bowing out with their body and followers intact. I will play that game. I may not be the most intelligent and calculating vampire around, but I have a few strengths and one of them is that I know when to rely on the assistance of a skilled ally. By provoking me, the Coddies have unleashed the very evil they had sought to contain. They think Sepher too devious. Not only will I call for her, I will also ask the support of the most devious and manipulative entity this side of reality. I am going to bring Sinead into this battle. Then, they will know devious. Good luck, I tell him as I leave. It will not suffice. Laurel's Tale. December 13th, an unnamed hamlet in Illinois. Laurel was the last to come in. He slammed the door behind him to keep the cold at bay and sighed with relief. Warm, at last. The common room was mostly deserted at that time. The road to Chicago was closed at this time of the year, which was why they had decided to use this establishment as a rally point for Brotherhood activity. The refuge was an absolute necessity now that winter was in full swing. It was a stupid mission to start with. They were tasked with finding traces of suspicious activity in the vicinity. At least there would be none of the more dangerous species about. There were no records of butchered livestock, and what would the evil bloodsuckers do in such a shithole? Laurel striped off his heavy coat and dropped it on the hanger. His two companions were already sitting at their usual table and rubbing their hands to bring some life back into them. The first one he recognized. It was Joe, a squirrely boy from Bale's team. The lad barely had any hair on his chin and wanted to play the Slayer. Ha, what a joke. The poor sod was reclining in his chair with a complicated expression, somewhere between fear and anger. The second man was also in the order's uniform. It was not quite his size and yet he was wearing it with predatory grace. He was lounging in his own chair with perfect confidence and for a moment, Laurel felt a pang of jealousy. He murmured a quick prayer to keep the temptation at bay. Envy was a cardinal sin, after all. He should just thank the Lord that this silver-haired gentleman was on his side. By God, Joe, you little shit, what are you doing here by yourself? Carl roared while scratching the stubble on his carmine cheeks. His porcine eyes focused on the boy like two gun muzzles. You shall not use the Lord's name in vain, Sal interjected in his low drone. As usual, Carl just dismissed him with one wave of his hairy paw. Yeah, shove it, Mr. Rent-a-Bishop. So Joe, where are the others? The young man mumbled something. Too low for the trio to understand but apparently loud enough for the gray-eyed man to smirk minutely. What's that? Carl spat. I said, they left me behind. Said I was a burden. They left me to die, so I don't care about them, his victim half yelled and half whined. Joe's eyes were shiny with unshed tears of outrage. As usual, neither Carl nor Sal cared a whit about the boy. Carl opened his mouth to start his usual badgering while Sal just sat there looking constipated, his thin mouth puckered in an eternal grimace of disapproval. It reminded Laurel of a cat's asshole. Enough of this, he said, exasperated. Before Carl could redirect his ill temper on him, Laurel turned to the newcomer. And who might you be, brother? I haven't seen you before. I am with Hodge's team. The rest of us will arrive tomorrow, the man replied genially. The new guy must have thought so too because he leaned forward and smiled dangerously. Laurel half expected him to demand satisfaction, but it turned out he was wrong. You must be cold. How about a drink? He then knocked on his table and called the barmaid with obvious pleasure. Barmaid. Barmaid, he said. She soon appeared, putting on her apron and staring down at the one who had called her with annoyance. Barmaid. Kindly give these gentlemen a beer. My treat, he declared generously. I'll put it on your tab, the woman retorted before moving behind the counter. Are you new? Laurel asked the girl with curiosity. Laurel was tempted to slam the vile man's face into the table but quickly implored the Lord to deliver him from the sin of wrath. The prayer only kind of worked. Greta is upstairs resting. She has had a long day, and I would appreciate it if you could keep your voices down, the woman retorted. With one last disapproving glance, the woman gritted her teeth and went for the pewter mugs. Laurel understood that lecherous prick Carl to an extent. The woman had golden hair like wheat under the sun, and sky-blue eyes. She was also beautiful. Her skin was rather pale with a delicate pink sheen over her cheeks. As she expertly drew beer from a barrel, he could not help but look down. She was moving with confident gestures that he found attractive. He looked down still and stopped himself before succumbing to the sin of lusty thoughts. The woman walked to them with the 3 mugs easily balanced in a single hand. She stopped at the edge of the table and frowned at Carl, who had licked his lips and was leering at her with naked sleaze. Without a word, the woman turned left and deposited the 3 mugs between Sal and Laurel himself, thus avoiding the risk of an errant hand. Avoiding me, lass? The disgusting man asked with a touch of anger. I have good instincts, she retorted. Carl, stop it, Laurel ordered. He could tell that his repulsive teammate wanted to escalate but the horrid man restrained himself. Even he knew that they were sent here in this desolate place because they had fallen out of favor and could not afford any more offenses under their names. In the end, the man relented. Bah, at least the beer is decent here, he growled. Carl then proceeded to slurp the liquid. This is a waste of time, Laurel muttered, his patience and determination fraying under the combined effort of the remoteness, the weather and his insufferable allies. There has not been anything of note around here since the Red Maiden, he continued with feelings. The Red Maiden, a foreign voice asked from the other table. It was the grey gentleman, currently holding his mug in front of his lips. Laurel groaned as Carl banged his drink on the table, sending foamy liquid across the polished wood. Ha! You don't know about the Red Maiden. I'll tell you all you need to know, stranger. Your pal Carl knows a lot, he does. I got it all from one of them archivist eggheads who gathered it from interrogation reports and spying. Lend me your ears, because it's a tale like no other. Behind the bar, the waitress started to scrub glasses with furious energy. She was clearly annoyed, and Laurel could see why. It only took people 30 seconds to guess that any story garnering Carl's interest would be vulgar. It all started in New Orleans, the land of savages, whores, Negroes and degenerates. The Red Maiden was made at Mardi Gras greatest orgy from the slut who had won the best ass contest. The barmaid sighed heavily, but she let the men continue. Laurel considered for one moment that he had joined the order to protect mankind from the depredations of unnatural creatures and that he had trained hard to learn how to face them. He had not expected that asking too many questions would land him there at the edge of civilization, forced to slog his way through the snow by day and listen to bawdy stories by night, paired up with a fanatical idiot who could only speak in Bible quotes and the sleaziest asshole this side of the Mississippi. Perhaps a career change was called for. He could respect his oath even if he operated independently. Next to him, Carl was still recounting his gross story with gusto to the polite interest of the Gray brother. Even the city's debaucheries could not satisfy her. She would tour the brothels and take part in bloody games to quench her unholy drives. Her appetite for the pleasures of the flesh was never satisfied. She would lust after genitals the size of bulls and balls the size of ostrich eggs. Carl added while extending his arm to demonstrate exactly how large the unlikely pieces of anatomy were. She would drain the seed of hundreds of men with her mouth to steal their strength, and drink it as well as their soul, which was sucked through the urethra. And that is why she was also called the Devourer. Laurel jumped in his seat at the unexpected sound of tortured metal. When he turned, however, he could only see the barmaid still cleaning a mug with a terribly focused expression. He shrugged, imagining that she would find the story vexing and attempt to ignore it. "Is that so?" the man lightly commented. "Right. But the story doesn't end here. She left the city in her eternal quest for ever girthier manhoods and finally found a mountain man somewhere in Georgia. A spirit of stone and depravity." Laurel noted in passing that the waitress was more affected than he thought. She was slowly thumping her head against the wooden bar while muttering imprecations. "Perhaps you should stop your story there, Carl. Your tale serves no purpose but to cause distress and horror." "But we're reaching the best part," his companion exclaimed with spittle flying in the air, how they labored together to create the ultimate sex automaton, a creature with endless stamina and an artificial Johnson that could be inflated in the middle of the action. They named it, the Key of Beriah. A sound like an explosion. Laurel searched the room to find the waitress' fist buried through a table. Her beautiful visage was twisted with fury, most of it directed at the Grey Knight who had lifted his hands in helpless surrender. "You think this is funny? Senek. And succum hiatu." Laurel's heart skipped a beat just as cold sweat erupted all over him. A shiver of dread crawled up his back as terror, sheer terror, paralyzed his mind. The appearance. The strange words. This strength. Her suddenly paler skin. It could not be. The Grey Gentleman replied in the same tongue with a tone that suggested an answer along the lines of, "Not my problem." An instant later, the woman shook her fists with anger and started a low hiss. To Laurel's savvy eyes, she looked like a woman 2 seconds away from tossing cutlery with malicious intent. Those slanderous, scandalous lies. Perfidy, she sputtered with outrage, "I would never." Horrified silence covered the inn until an elegant voice interrupted it. "Are you quite sure you never lusted after large genitals?" the man in grey observed while inspecting his nails, which were black and quite sharp. Then he turned to the woman with the deadliest shit-eating grin Laurel had ever seen. The suicidal moron added in a mocking falsetto voice. "Is that your main gun, Captain, or are you just happy to see me?" Laurel appended his table and jumped to the side just as a stream of incoherent curses, in French of all things, turned into a scream of feral rage. "Gujat. Malo true. Sombre Cregan." An instant later, a piece of the bar with the deformed nails still attached crashed against the wall, missing the other man only because he had dodged it with supernatural speed. Not one, but 2 vampires. Unthinkable. Laurel instantly knew that they were still alive because the vampires were bickering. He climbed to his knees and grabbed the pallid Carl, dragging him behind himself. "We have to get out," he screamed. Thankfully, they had the entrance wall to their direct back and the door was only a few feet away. They could do it. Sal did not listen. The religious retard stood up with an expression of triumph, brandishing his cross before him. In the name of the F.A. An instant later, the man's brains splattered against the stone behind them as the two survivors were showered with pieces of ceramic shrapnel. Laurel thought in passing that he had never seen a man killed with a thrown plate before. Laurel crawled to the door while on the other side of the upended table, a cataclysmic conflict was taking place with the fracas of broken furniture and the errant piece of gliding masonry. They finally reached the door. Laurel reached up for the knob, pausing only when a massive cleaver embedded itself only a hair away from his fingers. With his heart thundering in his ear, he finally managed to open the door and pass through. He turned around just to see a delicate hand ending in savage talons close around the neck of his companion before the man disappeared back into the room. Laurel turned and ran. He sprinted with all his strength, needled by despair. There was a derelict house in front of him across the town square. The stables were just behind. 5 seconds. 4 seconds. 3 seconds. Almost there. 2 seconds. 1 second. Behind him, the door of the inn crashed open as he was crossing the threshold of the ruin. A primal instinct made him turn. The woman was here with her arm up, claws extended. Laurel fell backwards with a scream, pointlessly covering his face. There was no pain. Hesitantly, Laurel removed his arm and took in his surroundings. He was inside the destroyed home. A quarter of the roof had collapsed, and it smelled of soot and unwashed bodies despite the open air. There was an extinguished fire by his left and a veritable rat nest of chest-high planks, tarps and clutter to his right piled against the wall. In front of him and on the other side of the threshold, the Red Maiden was staring in disbelief as she attempted in vain to enter the collapsed edifice. "But how?" she exclaimed. And suddenly, the rat nest exploded outward. In an instant, Laurel realized his mistake. The pile of debris was actually a makeshift cabin. A light shone from beyond the tarps and he could even spot covers on the other side. A ghastly apparition suddenly stood before him. It was a man with a long beard that must have been white at some point of the distant past, possibly before it was used as a napkin, handkerchief, and other things he did not dare contemplate. His bald head was oily and grimy and two insane eyes above a large nose were fixed on Laurel with an expression of sheer malevolence. From the waist up, the man was covered in more layers of cloth that he thought could be possible, giving him an air of impossible obesity. From the waist down, the creature was completely naked. Two hirsute spindly legs emerged from the mess of shirts, and between them freely dangled the man's shriveled genitals. They quivered feebly in the glacial air as he jumped up and down, spitting and vociferating. "Get off my lawn!" The stench emanating from the poor sod was nauseating and Laurel covered his nose. He must have intruded in the home of the Hamlet's reject. Then the reality of his situation came back to his battered mind and he fearfully returned his attention to the maiden, only to find the vampire unmoving. She was cradling her elbow in one hand, the other hand massaging the bridge of her nose. Her eyes were closed. They stayed like this for a good 10 seconds with the local idiot still jumping around. Eventually, she threw both hands in the air. "That's it. I am done. I am done. Done." Then she turned around and walked to the middle of the square, picked up the destroyed door, replaced it on its hinges and slammed it closed behind her. Laurel could not believe his luck and did not expect for it to last. He ran to the stable and took his horse, riding east until a pallid dawn cast its cold glow on the snowy land. And that is the closest a Gabrielite ever came to the Red Maiden without dying. Constantine's office is as spacious and ordered as before, but now it feels crowded. To my right stands a tall man with dark curly hair and the beard and mustache of a Spanish conquistador, which, arguably, he might be. He is also my rival for the ownership of the state of Illinois. Behind his desk, Constantine gauges the both of us as we sit at attention, studiously ignoring each other. "I have a task for you," he finally says. "I have received concerning reports of unusual werewolf activity around the Grand Lakes region, particularly in Detroit, Michigan, and the city of York in Canada. Those cities are currently occupied by small covens of the Roland, and their house has requested my assistance in this matter. House Eerie will go to Detroit and House Cotties to York, where you will collaborate with the local clans to elucidate then resolve the issues. You will be accompanied by people I fully trust, Melitone and Ignace. I hiss and stop, as Constantine immediately raised a hand to preclude any protest I may have. I am not completely insensitive, Ariane. Melitone will go with you. Is that agreeable? Yes, I reply without hesitation. I should not have lashed out at the mention of my torturer, and yet, I have. My fingers itch. I ignore them. Continuing. The dominion over Illinois will be granted to those who have made the most significant contribution to our cause. I will not share the exact method by which I will judge you. Know that elements such as the numbers of folk killed as well as allied lives and assets kept out of harm will be taken into consideration, and so will more unquantifiable contributions such as bringing a long-term end to the matter. Constantine leans forward, his lean fingers intertwined on top of his desk. You must take this task with utmost seriousness. For the first time in history, werewolves have been spotted in groups larger than 3 and displayed obvious signs of organization. I cannot overstate how unprecedented this is. So far, they have been nothing but pests or loners. If they form a faction, the political balance in our lands will be changed forever. I am counting on you to get to the bottom of the matter. Of course, sir, my neighbor replies. Right, I add, already considering the implications. A year ago or so, I rescued a werewolf from the order prison where Sevilla and Nami were also held captive. Alistair was his name, and he was originally from the city of York. He had mentioned that communities had formed in the Canadian wilderness. He had also mentioned a group called Black Peak that was trying to gain dominance. At that time, I had dismissed the whole affair as having nothing to do with me, and I had not helped him. Well, the joke is on me now. This mass movement is most certainly related to that whole business. Either those groups Constantine mentioned are refugees or, more worrying, the Black Peak Wolves are trying to expand. I really hope this is the former. I could, of course, share my observations with Constantine and my rival, but I really do not see the point. Vampires only rarely interact with werewolves besides by hunting them down, though individuals are sometimes used as freelance agents. If I treat them as an organized faction from the beginning, it might give me the edge I need to win this contest. There are additional terms by which you will have to abide, Constantine continues with a pointed look. I am sure he anticipates some level of treachery. The poor sod. He has no idea what I am about to unleash, witness or not. Melitone cannot be everywhere at once. First, Lazaro, you may only employ the vampires and mortals you have registered in your request to take over the state. That means that he can only rely on his subordinates, not his entire clan. Good news. As for you, Ariane, you may not call upon Torin nor Sephair to act directly, he declares, then as an afterthought, and please keep the artillery, explosions and flaming pigs to a minimum. I sputter in outrage. Calumnies. Shameless defamation. It seldom ever happens. Lazaro, you may leave. Ariane, please stay, we have another matter to discuss. My rival bows then, to my surprise, turns to me. I am sorry that we would meet this way, Lady Ariane. It is an honor to face you in this contest, and I wish you good fortune. He grabs his fancy hat and departs the room. How dare he be polite and respectful while I plan to do unspeakably devious things to him and his party? This proper behavior will not save him from my wrath. His clan should have thought twice before annoying me. We wait until the door closes behind us. Then we wait some more. And some more. I am tempted to draw on the Hastings essence. Besides turning coffee into an elixir of the gods, it allows me to act more human. That means shifting in the seat, scratching my arm and other mannerisms that vampires apparently find endlessly annoying coming from another vampire, according to Torin. Fortunately, Constantine speaks before I must resort to psychological warfare. I instinctively grip the edge of my seat. If he dares. Since it is my decision to forbid Torin from helping you, I consider your task complete. As for your reward, you have completed both tasks I required of you, and as promised, you may draw from my essence. Constantine shows the most minute signs of distress. A mortal would have missed it. Now will do, I suppose. Come, he announces as he stands up. Despite my best effort, I must have shown a sign of excitement because my host looks a bit aggravated. Progenitor blood. A rare treat indeed. It will lack vitality, but this power. I join him behind his desk, a symbolic allowance on his part. He extends one bare wrist which I take delicately, then his other hand whips out and grabs my head with lightning speed. I freeze. From where I stand, I see the edges of a mage gauntlet of incredible power. The contained aura of the artifact thrums with a threatening rhythm like war drums in the distance. It tastes of blood, iron, and the tide. I feel no aggression from Constantine, and so I stay still. Even my instincts are silent as power emanates in waves from the progenitor's form. He is considerably faster than me. He is also known as a blood magic genius, showing incredible innovation, a rarity among our kind. I am convinced that he will not kill me if I do not give him cause, and so I keep my peace. I place myself in a vulnerable position. Even if you were to swear an oath not to harm me now, the backlash of breaking that oath could possibly justify my death. When you taste my essence, the temptation will be here to consume more of it than you should. That is why when I say stop, you will stop, or you will regret it. Briefly. Do I make myself perfectly clear? I nod. Good, you may begin. I lick the skin over the vein, eliciting a sigh. I can feel the power crawling languishly under the pale skin. Despite my best efforts, I find myself anticipating the moment with great pleasure. I bite down. High tide. I must hurry or I will be too late. I cannot believe that the village could do that. They are stupid. Our village was not cursed. All the towns around us have bad harvests due to the poor weather, and the raiders were not due to bad luck, but because that Alderman Gixajo skimped on hiring some guards. I rush to the shore, hoping I am not too late. Behind me I hear the cries of pursuers. They know that I will act. They will not catch up. The beach, and the rocky formation at its edge. The bar of sand has been reduced to a thin line by the conquering waves. Too late. The entrance is already submerged. I am too late. Hello, young man. I turn to see a woman covered in a cloak looking down with a smile. Despite the urgency, and despite the late hour, all thoughts abandon me. I can but stare. She is incredibly gorgeous, the most breathtaking beauty I have ever seen. She could walk right into Madrid and the king would throw himself at her feet, begging her to be his wife. The Pope would embrace damnation for a night with her. Even with most of her form hidden, I can see hints of unmarred golden skin, a dark eye like a summer night and lips as red as blood. The cloak shifts, and I see the beginning of her cleavage, the barest hint of a curve. It would be enough for some to sell their souls. The goddess chuckles warmly as she sees me gape like an idiot. The sound is soft and intimate, not mocking. I feel privileged that she would share it with me. A bit late are we? Only a champion could brave the waves and the rocks now. Only a champion could save his precious sister. Do you want to be this champion? Yes. She smiles again, and removes from the recess of her garb a phial of exquisite make. I am a clock worker. I know the work of a master when I see one. Golden filigree encircles the body and stopper to form some alien characters I do not recognize. Beyond the crystalline barrier, I see droplets of a carmine liquid. What is this? I ask. Fate, the woman replies. I feel measured by her gaze, judged and weighted by a cold intellect without match in any place where I have plied my trade. Drink it, and become the one who can save your sister. Or do not and return to obscurity. I have no need to hesitate. I remove the stopper and imbibe the contents. This is not a liquid. It looks like it, behaves like it, but what slides down my throat is living fire. A power without match. No language of mankind can give justice to the intensity of it, the purity. It feels so dangerous and intimate at the same time. It moves through me. I drop the phial and fall to my knee, mouth agape and breath stolen as the decoction ravages my insides. It is pain, pleasure, hot and cold. And vibration like the purr of a cat if the cat were the size of the moon. All of it at once. The sensation grows too intense for me to stay conscious. In a way, I die. And I am reborn. Then, after what felt like an eternity, it is done. Whatever the potion did is completed, and I am in full control of myself once again. I feel so strong, so incredibly powerful. I can see her perfectly now, I can hear and smell everything. A manic energy moves my limbs as four strange new things protrude against my gums. My nails have fallen off, to be replaced by small talons like obsidian. I take a few seconds to remove the blood and discarded keratin from my shoes. I will go now, I declare with finality. I have already wasted too much time. Do as you please, young one. We will not meet again. Fare thee well. She is gone and so I am. My steps lead me to the beach, then to the rocky amalgam extending into the sea. There, our ancestors imprisoned sacrifices by placing them in a cave that could only be accessed at low tide. Other gaps allow the air to come in, but they are too small to pass through. They are barely enough for the voice inside to moan and beg, an unwilling bride for the god of the sea. The villagers sent my sister to die for them and I know why. She was always too headstrong, my melatonin. Just as smart as me who apprenticed with the clockmaker, but born a woman and unwilling to bend to tradition. I feel a deep anger boil and fester inside my now silent heart as I slip into the sea, as I swim through the furious waters as if they were but a mild bath in some bourgeois tub. I am fast and strong, so strong. I do not even need to struggle for breath. The interior of the cave is dark but I can see. Sister. Gaineyes, is that you? Is this a dream? A trembling voice answers. I grab her cold hand and place it on my face. Her fingers trace the familiar form. I came here to rescue you. Then you are a fool. The current will be too strong now. It is not. There is a way. We will bind our fates. I slash my wrist and push it against her bluish lips. She is shivering now. Weakened. Her frantic eyes search the darkness for me. Drink and you will become strong. I do not know how I know this, only that my confidence is absolute. She trusts me, she drinks just as I bite her. I could have done something differently so that she could become like me, but the change is all-encompassing, and it will have a price. That way she is bound as a servant. Not an equal, but a partner. She will be stronger though, stronger than all other servants. She will share some of my power, because she is my sister, my only family, and I want her to be able to protect herself from now on. It is easy to leave, it is easy to climb out of the sea and shake the sand from our clothes. Our steps are assured and although I remain stronger, she is more dangerous than any soldier I have ever seen. What now? She asks, her voice calm and confident. She was always good at moving on. Me, not so much. Now. I reply with a cruel smile, now we return to the village. I pull back. I have seen enough, I have taken enough. The essence is mine now. I finally understand the secret power Gaineyes, no, Constantine, has chosen for himself. Just as my own sire was driven by conquest, Constantine crossed the boundary out of brotherly love. The touch of his line will make the servant better, more powerful. Inhuman. Not as strong as a vampire but sharing none of our weaknesses, they will be a force to reckon with. Not to mention that we still cannot touch them. The taboo is still here. I find his sacrifice touching. I need to remember that Melitone will display superhuman abilities, especially now that she has had a century to train. It also implies that should she fall, the murderer will have to face a vengeance like no others. That was interesting, Constantine idly comments to mask his temporary weakness. I care not. Again, so much power. I can feel it roll and merge into me. Its touch is gentler than Sinead and Sevilla's essence, a pawn to their torrent, but no less powerful for it. I stretch in delight under the soothing effect, marveling at its strength. My essence follows the line of my body, while my aura is more diffuse and more flexible. I can feel it growing denser and darker. It feels good. I flex my claws. Now would be a good time for a hunt, but alas, necessity makes law. I note in passing that I am not drunk, just like the night I tasted my sire's essence all those years ago. Perhaps it is due to the low vitality. Curious. Constantine studies me for a while, and I allow him some time to recuperate. He has not dismissed me yet, therefore it would be rude to leave. What is the core of the Nerari's essence? Consumption. No, I reply, conquest. But you have not defeated me. Victory and conquest are not the same thing. An offer of blood is a clear sign of submission, is it not? To expose yourself so thoroughly to my mercy. Constantine replies, frowning, I think you may leave now. Our deal is done, and you have much to do, he retorts with a bit of anger. I laugh as I leave. No need to be so sore, speaker. I have almost forgiven you for what you have done to me. Just leave. Melitone will join you in Marquette. I chuckle and close the door behind me. I already knew I would need resources to complete my mission. The first step is thus to return to Marquette and gather those resources. Constantine correctly anticipated this move, and I can rely on Melitone joining me shortly. As expected, I cannot count on Torin. Not that I planned on asking him for help. Torin is my senior in every regard, to rely on him is to send a signal that I am dependent on him. That will not do. Thankfully, I have much to work with. As I step outside of the manor and onto the inner garden, I am joined by the first additional member of our expedition. When I saved Melusine, I demanded of her a one-time assistance in battle, a favor I am calling upon now. As she turns and narrows her eyes, I will admit that she looks rather good in a brown traveling dress and deep green cloak that complement her pale skin and carmine curls. I am here, as promised, she declares as we make our way along the fountain and onto the gravel road leading down. I nod and we both whistle at the same time. Métis trots out of her stable with a prancing gait that shows everyone that she is the best nightmare around, and she knows it. She stops a few paces in front of us and snorts disdainfully, like the big good warhorse she is. By comparison, Melusine's nightmare is thinner, less muscular though arguably more graceful. She seems to glide on the earth with thin hooves while Métis trample the ground with the sound of thunder heralding the coming of the Huns. What is this delicate flower of the night? This is not a nightmare. A nightmare exists to run down werewolves and smash into human lines like the wrath of the Watcher itself. Both Melusine and I finish our inspection of each other's horse and scoff at the same time. I turn to her with fangs bared. Just so that we are clear, my pony is better than your pony. In your dreams, peasant. Zana is a prime example of the perfect nightmare, a shadow weaving through the trees without a sound. Any mortal catching a glimpse of her will question their sanity before this dark mirage. Dark mirage, my posterior. Is this the one you will ride into battle charging down a pack of Wendigos? The only thing you will slay is a romantic poet, and only if the tuberculosis does not get him first. You could not tell a proper nightmare if it kicked you in the face, you flat-assed milksop. Melusine gasps in outrage and displays her fangs in return. And you would not know good taste if it was shoved up your muddy butt, you bumbling meathead. Ladies, please, a warm and slightly accented voice says from behind. I turn around to see my darling here and smile helplessly. He looks dashing in traveling leather, with that sardonic smirk that lifts one corner of his mouth more than the other. Without another word, he passes us by and calls for Crower. The larger war horse trots forth with elegance and dignity. Torin climbs on it and rides first. Melusine and I exchange a glance. At least you have good taste in men, she reluctantly admits. I wish I could return the compliment, Melusine, I really do. Then after a pause, because I am not completely insensitive, and she did lose her vassal and lover not too long ago. With one notable exception, I concede. It is not every day that you will find a man who will hide your insensate form with his own dying body to save your life. We both fall silent as melancholy overcomes my companion. I grab her by the arm and pull her forward. Nothing like a good ride to clear one's head, after all. We gallop and soon catch up with Torin as he rides down the path along the cliff leading down from the manor. The humans' guards, always vigilant, let us pass without a word after a cursory inspection by the light of their torches. When we reach him, my lover slows down and pulls alongside me. Your essence is denser, he declares while inspecting me. You can tell. Yes. Soon, it will be enough to forge a soul weapon. What are soul weapons anyway? I ask with curiosity. We never actually discussed it, simply because I preferred his tales of home, games, and politics, and I wanted to make it clear that I was interested in him as an individual, not because of his role as a smith. This time is different. Torin initiated the conversation himself. Soul weapons are crystallized essence, molded into an offensive form. They are the highest form of weaponry in this plane of existence and are unchanging and indestructible so long as the vampire lives. Soul weapons are killing drive made manifest. Can an armor be a soul weapon? No. First, the artifact itself is a proactive item while most armors are reactive. Lord Jarek's gauntlets are not protection, for example, but extensions of his fists. Could a gun be a soul weapon? I ask with excitement. Torin considers the question seriously. Perhaps. There are a few ranged soul weapons already. Really? Indeed. Your sibling Svyatoslav, for example. He uses a bow of tremendous size. Ammunition would be a concern though, and it would not fit you. What do you mean? I ask, surprised. I do enjoy my guns. As I mentioned, soul weapons are an expression of one's violence. Yours is up close and personal. Firearms are ranged weapons and they imply a certain desire to keep a distance from the conflict, and are usually associated with an ambush hunter's mind. You can be patient, but you definitely prefer to be in the thick of it. Torin is not wrong. Even my pistols are often used at point-blank range. To be fair, this is the best way to use a pistol as they are not the most precise firearms around. Ha! What do you think my soul weapon would be then? I have no idea, dear, however I hope that you will call upon me to forge it for you. I will do it for free. You are too kind, I reply with appreciation. While the cost of a single forging is not only astronomical, the services of the smith may not even be purchased with money to begin with. How does it work? May I ask? I go on. Explaining in too much detail would break the mystique of the forging itself. Your essence right now is in your body. It follows its outline, though the essence itself is not physical. You can already pool it and send it elsewhere. Like tendrils? Precisely. The forging consists of drawing out a large amount of essence and then, with my assistance, severing it and molding it into a weapon. The essence is still yours, but it is separate from your normal body. It also coalesces into something physical. That sounds painful, I remark. Excruciatingly so. It will also weaken you. Temporarily. I jump on the occasion to ask another question that had bothered me. So, we do lose essence. When we create a soul weapon and when we sire a fledgling? And when you burn under the sun? I shiver at the memory, a memory I have shared with him. To my surprise, Torin has never been touched by the golden orb's unforgiving radiance, though he has suffered countless other wounds. Yet less than a year of being able to move during the day and I have already been roasted once. Maybe I am just an idiot. Can we recover that essence? I ask with worry. I cannot afford to weaken. Yes and no, Torin replies, you will recover what you lost quickly. You must have realized that the thirst grew stronger for a while. Well, it was to rebuild yourself. It still slows your growth a little bit because while you heal, you do not grow stronger. That is why I would suggest that in the future, you try to stay out of the daylight, he finishes with fake condescension. Duly noted, I reply with a murderous glance. Torin has grown more teasing in the past few weeks, following in the footsteps of Jimena, Nami and basically anyone who has grown close to me. Is it fun to needle the devourer? Unfair. By now, we are crossing the fields and glasshouses covering the valley. We continue in silence for a while, until I notice signs that Melusine wishes to speak to me. Surprised, I pull back after a last nod at my lover and align myself with her. As we ride side by side I realize with pleasure that between my size and Métis, I am easily 2 heads taller than her. Yes. I ask with a smirk. Melusine huffs, completely unamused. I have a proposal for you, Ariane. Ooh, we are on a name basis now. Do tell. I am yours for this mission, under the seal of secrecy you so heavily insisted upon, she reminds me with annoyance, and I fully intend to repay my debt. With that said, one of the causes of the current situation should be obvious to you by now. All vampires are snakes and anyone not bound to you by alliance and contract is to be considered an enemy in waiting. I suggest. Melusine merely rolls her eyes. Nature abhors a vacuum, you simpleton. If you want your land to be fully secured, a coven must be established in every power center of the state. Provided that you win, you must take over the northern part of your domain. I stare at her, long and hard. Melusine does not flinch under my scrutiny. She lifts her chin with all the aristocratic grace embedded into her persona since she was dragged screaming into her clan so many nights ago. You. I coldly state. Yes, me. I will swear an oath of allegiance to you. I will cover your backyard and promote your interests in the state and in the whole continent. I will come to your side when you call for battle. I will pay a tithe. In return, you let me rule the town as I see fit, with no interference and no spy to look over my shoulder. A true city master. You would follow me? I ask disbelieving. You are better than most. It is true that devourers always keep their words, the sane ones in any case. As for me, you know well what I am capable of. You rule your land in the manner of the Eneru, with many knowing of your existence and a level of control that borders on the absolute. It will not work everywhere. She looks forward now, fully absorbed in her demonstration. In front of us, Torin shifts to let me see his amused smile. We must appear as children splitting a cake for one such as him. The North will host the state capital because of its proximity to the Great Lakes, it will grow too fast for you to swallow. A more delicate touch is required to make the most of it, an iron hand in a velvet glove. She closes a fist and turns to me again with a hint of disdain. While you are an iron hand in an iron gauntlet, the one with the tiny spikes on the knuckles. Continue with your demonstration, I pointedly suggest. For larger cities, the touch of mask is preferable. I will rule from the shadows in your name and bring us countless benefits. I will stir it in secret, for you controlling sort still haven't realized that only the unfelt ruler is truly safe. On the other hand, you merely have to focus on what you enjoy doing to keep the jackals off our backs. I consider her proposal. First, she is serious. I can tell from her posture and determined air. She also makes a good point. I will need to create covens. I am unwilling to sire spawn for now, and Urchin does not qualify as a coven member. Second, and most important, can I trust her? If she is willing to take an oath, then yes. Despite her devious Lancaster ways, she is still one of our kind and we do not break oaths easily. It still bears the question. You and I have been at odds many times. Are you not worried that I may use this opportunity to take revenge? Would you? I am asking you. Melusine smiles softly. For all your achievements I forget that you are still young. For us, alliances of interests and enmities of opportunity are things to be discarded in the long run. I still think you are too callous and direct for your own good, and yet there is no denying your successes and, more importantly, your integrity. She stares me in the eyes with candor. I would have no qualms following someone such as you, for as long as our agreement holds. If I have my city, then I will found a coven, accrue power, and eventually, after I become a lady, I will find more wherever she hides and skewer her rotten heart. Then I will personally shove warm coals up her nasty. I phase out Melusine as she descends into cold rage, listing the many indignities she would subject her fallen superior to. Interestingly, many of them involve fire in some fashion. I think I can trust her. In theory, her arrangement is also to my benefit, though this time I will consider the question before taking any hasty decision. I will not repeat my mistake of agreeing to Lady Sephaire too quickly. I will consider your proposal, I reply as I interrupt Melusine's next description on what she will do to more, which involves a box with a small opening, coals and a rabid wolverine. I must admit that I was not impressed with your performance when we were both in New Orleans, I continue, and to my surprise, Melusine does not object. You did not strike me as a competent follower then. It would significantly help your case if our cooperation went well, I continue. I understand, she replies. We nod to each other with grudging respect and return to riding in a single file. The rest of the trip to the way station is done in silence. A few hours later, Torin and I part ways after promises to spend more time together when all is done. He will travel around for a bit while Melusine and I rush to Marquette at high speed using armored carriages. We have a war to plan, and to win. The dream. My old bedroom. Marquette is still bustling with activity, but the nature of the night shifted. Perhaps leaving the city gave me the distance I needed to come to a realization. Marquette is no longer a godforsaken mudhole. When I came here for the first time it most definitely was. Now, even at night, ladies and gentlemen decked in good if conservative clothes walk the street, going to some fancy restaurants or the newly opened theater house. Even the Dream's clientele has visibly improved compared to when it started. The rowdy lights and loud songs are muted, and I notice that Merritt wisely decided to make Harrigan's security force shave and bathe. The world is changing, including the things I built. That is fine. I am changing too. I hope I will keep changing quickly enough. Torin told me tales of others who were left behind, who allowed themselves to drift. They do not truly fall, but their influence dims as they retreat to ever more parochial villages, their hearts filled with bitterness and the mistaken belief that they were cheated. I must never let that happen to me. With a sigh, I adjust my newest dress and open the window to jump out. That dress is the answer to an age-old dilemma. How can I appear as a leader of men without a dress that can also double as a mainsail? How can I walk through a salon and a battlefield with the same aplomb? And finally, is there a way to wear a dress and jump from a roof without said dress ending over my head, my unmentionables thus revealed for the entire world to see? I used to make do with good cuts and holding my hands on the sides of my knees, but no longer. I have a new secret weapon. Based on the battle dress design, I asked for a traditional cut above the waist with just a bit of cleavage to expose my collarbones. The forearms are left bare so that I can wear bracers if the occasion calls for it. Below the waist, I wear trousers with a single layer of dress-like fabric sewed on. That way, it looks like a dress until I start running. Only then do the trousers become visible. So it's not cheating. Besides that, the new and improved battle dress also comes with a heart protector and some sheaths but no room for pistols and no additional armor. It is quite sturdy though, courtesy of Booth, Wilhelm's tailor. This one is red. I am making a statement. Our war room is set in a new office building close to Merritt's home and Marquette's warehouse district. As soon as I am far enough away from the dream, I don a dark cloak and walk the streets without worry. I could not afford to be recognized in my old establishment, but out there, the old wisdom is still to not look too hard at the passing strangers. The office is large, with 3 stories, proper windows and a side warehouse to store anything we might need ranging from spare wheels to muskets. The silver ingots used for crafting magical implements are kept in a safe upstairs. As I confidently step inside, a pair of guards notice my approach. The younger one frowns and grabs for his shouldered rifle, but he is instantly stopped by his partner, one of Harrigan's veterans. The graying soldier shakes his head and the recruit swallows nervously before resuming his guard. "Evening, gentlemen," I generously greet as I go by. "Ma'am," they reply in unison. "Ah, it is good to be home." Melusine is waiting for me in the soberly furnished lobby, just as I requested. Her own secured vault is under the main dormitory, the very same place where Jonathan blew up my shed, while Urchin's is right here. He should already be upstairs. "Have you slept well? Your facilities were adequate, though I must ask, how did those 2 children know of what I was?" "Merritt's children? I did not hide my nature from them." "Is that wise?" "The little girl asked me to braid her hair," she huffs, scandalized. "Well, did you?" Melusine half pouts half hisses. "Then it was wise," I reply with a knowing smile. The proud Lancaster keeps growling behind me as we climb up to the top floor, passing a few employees still working at this late hour. I only did it because red hair needs a delicate hand. Ours is the rarest and most beautiful of colors. "Right." Melusine huffs and averts her gaze. "The cubs have claimed yet another victim. Believe what you will." "Oh, I always do." Here, we have finally arrived. A guard in a leather overcoat opens the door to the stateroom, and we walk in. A crowd has gathered around the central table upon which several maps have been drawn. There is Urchin, impeccably dressed and currently twirling a knife in his hands with preternatural speed. He apparently picked up on finger acrobatics, and this is possibly the first time I have seen him move with vampiric grace. Next to him, Sinead is helpfully showing my minion a few tricks to test his limits. He and his fiancée must not have been far to come this quickly. A lucky break, for me that is. For the Coddies? Not so much. Then there is Merritt, currently conversing with a Cabal mage I am pleased to see again. John is not here, and the reminder of his absence dampens my good mood. Even if he was useful in the ambush and I thanked him for it, I can tell that something is bothering him. At his request, I granted him his first vacation since he entered my service, and he has been spending more time with his wife. I am not sure what to think. John was never vassal material. They are meant to help us maintain our humanity while John draws out my own controlling tendencies. He is the perfect puppet, loyal to a fault, but also lacking the wit and initiative that Dalton had. At the same time, he has always been special, and I find that the distance growing between us darkens my mood. Thankfully, I am quickly offered a distraction from those sad musings. Melusine comes in after me and gapes like a complete bumpkin, to my utter delight. Oh, to savor the moment. To remember it forever. Pick up your jaw, Melusine, we have work to do. But no. It's what? How? A Fey highborn? How? She keeps protesting as I drag her forward, past urchin who bows smartly without stopping his game. He is unchained. Ariane. Your Fey Highborn is free. Free. Hello Poppet, and what a titillating morsel you have brought me tonight, the prince declares in his usual velvety voice. Sinead has shed his disguise and his amber eyes and golden hair shine with an otherworldly glow. Wisps of blue flame dance in his pupils and his crooked smile only widens at the Lancaster's surprise. Sinead apparently decided that if he was not going to hide, he would be the most visible of all in a white suit and garish golden shirt. I am delighted to see you, Sinead. Rest assured that these two are sworn to secrecy. Of course, my dear, you are not the sharing type. Oh, but what is this I sense in your aura? You found yourself a lover. Is well laid somehow written on my face? I hope not. Yes. And quite a capable one at that, I retort with vengeful pride before realizing that it really is none of his business. Perhaps we should spend some time together so that you can compare, Sinead replies in smooth and seductive Lycaean. I frown at the term he chose for sex. Lycaean obviously possesses several words and idioms for lovemaking, and the one he picked implies feelings shared in a casual relationship. Very daring of him indeed. If only you could handle all of my urges, I reply in the same language, to Melusines' renewed disbelief. The poor thing is positively flummoxed. Sinead raises his hands in surrender, though he does not withdraw his offer, and that is telling. He then rotates to let us pass. We can discuss more later, Poppet. Let us start that war council of yours. I am eager to play. I nod and drag the nonplussed Melusine to our next guest, Merritt. I note in passing that the concentration of redheads in the room is much higher than in the rest of the country. Is there something with me and gingers? I shall have to study the question. Merritt, meet Melusine of the Lancasters, a semi-competent mage. Melusine, this is Merritt, my second in command, I announce, making the presentations. Oh hello, Merritt greets semi-guardedly. Are you the mother of Oliver and Elena? Melusine asks with interest. Oh my God, did they do something? Elena did not ask you to help her, did she? Merritt asks with concern. No, Melusine replies, just a bit sheepish. Oh, the blackmail material. Yes. Merritt is in charge of Marquette when I am not around. She will assist us in getting the supplies we need in a timely fashion, I add to save my ally. And the reinforcements too if things get out of hand. Go finish your round, Ari, we have a myriad things to go over. With a smile, Melusine and I turn to the Cabal mage. Good evening Frost, I did not expect to see you here. The old man smiles, his demeanor going from stern to grandfatherly in a heartbeat. His white hair and beard are impeccably trimmed, and he wears a dark gray suit that really complements his image of a benevolent elder gentleman. Until the smile turns almost feral. There were mentions of werewolf packs. I have to see it with my own two eyes. Forgive me for saying so, but there should be a lot of traipsing. Should you not leave this to the younger generation, someone less important? I ask. Frost considers me, tilting his head to the side in a gesture that vampires would consider predatory. I am amused, and keep a carefully neutral expression. Frost is trying to determine if I insulted him. I can feel Melusine's aura behind me shift from restrained to interested. Eventually, Frost and I smile at the same time, aware of each other's game. Do you know how long I have been at this? He asks. A very long time. I know your aging slows as you grow in power. You are correct, young one. I am, indeed, very old. Ancient, even. I asked to come here, because I do not want the younglings to risk themselves on what could be a very dangerous mission, you see. I am old and disposable. He grins and crosses his arms, waiting. A test. The excuse he gave me was a false one. Not quite a lie, a half-truth. What reason could he possibly have to come here? Interest in me? No, he had plenty of opportunities before and I am not so fascinating. What then? And finally, it strikes me. His lack of concern, his game, the eagle-like gaze and the head tilt. Frost is not just a kindly and protective senior member of the Cabal's government. Besides that, or rather before that, he was a killer. Yes, I see it now, in the certainty of his stare. There is a hungry quality to it. You miss it, don't you? The grin widens. The hunt, I continue. Melusine steps up and now we are a triangle of apex monsters. Oh, Frost might be immortal and his envelope is now frail, but the aura I feel underneath that he briefly revealed, that was interesting. I hope you bring me something new and exciting, Ariane dear. A few more years and I might just die in my bed, and wouldn't that be a shame? Some consider it the best kind of revenge. And they are completely wrong, it is merely the most convenient. Ah, but look at me rambling. I believe you have done all the little social niceties expected of you, so why don't we move to the meat of the subject? Quite right. And I hear the last two guests coming. As promised and a few moments later, the door is thrown wide open by an impatient Melatonin. The servant and I have interacted only a few times, but it always struck me how similar she and Constantine are. They share the same aristocratic and exotic look, the same no-nonsense attitude and the same impatience to a world that does not move at their speed, nor matches their rational intellect. The only difference is that Melatonin is slightly shorter and pretty, and that she is abrasive and direct where Constantine is distant and patient. I found this stumbling in the street. Is this yours? Oh, evening everyone. Does anybody want some carrot cake? It's my specialty, a disheveled witch declares with a wide grin. Some things apparently do not change. When I met Violet in Alexandria, the dream-focused witch had been a bit lost and isolated. I can tell that she has made some effort with her appearance tonight, with even her winter dress sort of color coordinated with the rest of her outfit. Her hair is also combed, for once. Alas, she ruined the impression with some obvious last-minute rush. She chose a ditzy bright pink shawl that horribly clashes with the rest of her outfit, possibly because of the unexpectedly frigid air. The wind has blown through a badly attached ribbon and now brown strands erupt from a prim and proper bun. It would be barely acceptable in a teenager and Violet is obviously in her 30s. I welcome her with a sympathetic smile. She will be instrumental in our next operation, and I am always willing to tolerate idiosyncrasies in talented individuals. Put the cake on the table, we are ready to begin, I offer. As everyone settles in silence, an employee comes with refreshments including a cup of black coffee for myself to everyone's disbelief. I choose to remain mysterious and to not explain myself. Being mysterious is a form of gloating. Both Sinead and Frost fall on the cake like Mongol raiders on a farming village, and both of them congratulate Violet for her excellent use of cinnamon, to the witch's dismay. It was supposed to be a secret ingredient, she mutters under her breath, apparently surprised at so many refined palates. After we are done with pleasantries, I quickly explain our mission, including the possibility of having to face large numbers of coordinated werewolves which I justify as this being a possible cause of so many groups of scouts being spotted. Indeed, scouts are used to draw maps and maps are used to wage war. Before I can ask my advisors what they think we should bring, however, Melatonin raises her hand. Yes. I am sorry for being the bringer of bad news, Ariane. Unfortunately, we received a rather rude missive from Mornay, official master of Detroit. I'll summarize the content for you and remove the flowery crap. He does not trust outsiders. He will only allow you to bring a second and 5 mortals. That's it. I blink, stupefied. I am sorry, was I not to assist him? Melatonin takes a placating expression. No need to protest, Ariane, you are preaching to the choir. The Roland clan called for help and since we accepted we are bound by the conditions they impose on us. Fewer resources means worse results. Are my competitors under the same constraints? I am sorry, Ariane, you already suspected that Lazaro and yourself would not face the exact same trials. Rest assured that your additional difficulties will be taken into consideration. I say nothing, but I know what the reality is. A failure is a failure, and excuses will never turn it into a success. Very well. Then Melusine will come with me. For the mortals I'll take Frost and 4 of his retinue, unless we are meant to bring in our own nourishment. That would be a terrible breach of etiquette on Moray's part. He would not dare it. I nod, and the rest of the council is dedicated to organizing our party. While we can only enter Detroit proper with a small group, nothing forbids me from having reinforcements around. Urchin will wait with mages and soldiers in a nearby village while we do our best to convince Moray that we are, in fact, here to assist. An hour later, everything is set and it is finally time for a second council, one of a darker nature. As the others leave the room, Sinead heads towards the liquor cabinet and helps himself to a crystal glass of amber liquid. He finds the room's most comfortable chair and collapses into it, somehow managing to make the gesture both lazy and elegant. She is well, he replies in English, her collaboration with your Dimension Mage, Ricardo, is going swimmingly. He figured out a reliable way to lock on specific realms using frequencies she had apparently regarded as too weak to matter. His success stings her pride, but her esteem for humans is growing as a result. His voice is neutral. This distance between us worries me. That is good to hear, I comment. Ask me, he orders curtly, apparently out of patience. I take a breath and state my request, one I had so far only alluded to. Please help me take over the state by sabotaging my competitors. Sinead grins, though his smile has an angry edge. He sips from his cup and leans forward. In a heartbeat, he goes from dilettante to deal broker. You annoy me slightly, Ariane, do you know why? I shake my head. Who knows what that wastrel finds vexing? I could tell from your message that you need some assistance in making the other group look bad, he quotes with disdain. You are still underestimating me, Poppet. You still think of me as a schemer and a rake, as superficial as my acting would make you believe. Sabotage? Pah! You expect me to send contradictory orders, sow discord, attack supply routes and spread false intelligence, do you not? Well. If that is the case, he retorts, you only needed that Hopkins lad you mentioned. He would have done perfectly, yet you called me. You must understand that the mortals and I do not play on the same field. I am no human operative, Poppet, I am an artist. A Lycian prince. His stare drills into me. You said that your ally, the Lady Sephaire, knows much about your foes. Yes, though be careful as she is 3 parts scorn and 1 part black tea. For the rest, you can rely on Violet to pass messages and I can bankroll all of your costs. Excellent. This will be enough for a proper demonstration. Sinead tilts his head and looks through a window. He grows contemplative. I told you what games we play, and where true victory lies, but you forgot. Or you did not believe me, which I can understand. No matter then, I will give you a taste of what it means to play the true eternal game. Go wage your war, make your alliances and subjugate new foot soldiers Ariane. You will absorb yourself in your struggles and forget about me and the request you made. Only when the last pieces fall in place and the king is checked will you remember what you caused, and the rule I thought I had taught you. I must look suitably lost because the Lycian sighs heavily. Nice words, I reply unamused, you will forgive me if I wait for results before marveling at your unparalleled genius. And speaking of growth, I finally figured out where mages come from. Now that I know that he will help me, there was another topic I wanted to raise with my most indiscreet of friends. Congratulations on finding out how babies are made, Ariane. Stop trying to distract me. I always suspected but I had little proof, until now that is. Do you know that we have a slew of mage toddlers born from mundane mothers recently? Is that so? How fortunate. I am talking about your bastards, Sinead. The Lycian smiles slightly. Most of the babies were born from those of my employees who did not take the necessary precautions. At first, I was merely suspicious of the unusually high number of births, yet only a look at the baby's hair was enough to understand the situation. They were like molten gold, like Sinead's own. You already knew it, I conclude at his lack of reaction. You knew that mage bloodlines come from a fey ancestor. I find it amusing that our children are stronger than us. In our home worlds, they would be but amusing toys with little potential, yet here they are the only ones who can alter reality with any degree of success, simply because they happen to be local while we are not, he continues with no trace of resentment. So, he did know. And now you so happen to have a new generation of spellcasters growing up in your domain, he continues, free for the taking, and with your own retainers to train them. You are most welcome. I freeze, stupefied. You did it on purpose. Sinead swirls the liquor in his glass with that typical air of light condescension that heralds the start of yet another lesson. My actions can benefit you while still being pleasant for me, a lucky happenstance if you will. The mortals have a term for that, I believe. Was it serendipity? Yes, serendipity. Any prince of summer who wants to live past the age of 10 learns how to sow seeds and achieve multiple goals with a single word. Those mages growing in your backyard will be of use to you unless I overestimate your recruitment skills. I frown, realizing the obvious. You help me far too much, Sinead, especially when I do not ask for it. What are you really after? The Lycian does not answer. He upends the glass and swallows its content, his face growing tense. We both know that we like each other and that all our arrangements and pacts are but formalities. You have already assisted me more than you should have, and I have returned the favor through my teachings. What do you want me to say, that I find you endearing? That from the moment you saved me from the cult, I have watched you with a longing only made more dire by the thrill of my inevitable doom. Should I act on my heart's desires? Should I explain how your shows of kindness and ruthlessness, of efficient violence tempered by the odd bout of adorable quirkiness are like a breath of fresh dew on the withered fields of my happiness? There, I said it. Wow. Did he just declare? Ha. Now be a dear poppet, and grow strong quickly so that I may return home, and you can finally see me as I am. I remain silent. Sinead's expression is candid with the smallest dash of vulnerability. I can imagine how incredibly rare it is for someone of his rank and stature to bear themselves so. The pitiless society he came from would chew him then spit him out if he were to reveal this degree of vulnerability. As for his honesty, I do not doubt it. Just as he started talking, he opened his aura to me without restraint. I can taste it even now, in all its fiery glory. I do not think that even a master at control could imitate the genuine affection it radiates at that moment. And I realize that I do like him, after a fashion. I like Torin very much. I will not betray his trust, yet Sinead is and has always been the forbidden fruit. A fruit I do not intend to pick. I will not follow you, I admit after a while, even though I suspect it will hurt him. I am sorry, Sinead, but my world is here, and it apparently needs me. I will not leave my life behind to go gallivanting in that cutthroat court of yours. Contrary to my expectations, the Lycian appears unaffected by my rejection. He finally closes his aura and walks towards the door, a sign that our conversation is at an end. I know. In any case, you asked your question and I gave you an answer. I want to go home, and I want you to survive and grow. Let us work towards that end, yes. Then he leaves without turning, closing the door's stateroom behind him. I would be lying if I said I was expecting this. I always knew that the way we helped each other went far beyond whatever arrangement we had. I never thought that Sinead would openly explain why. Well, it does not matter. I have Torin and I am not interested in building a harem, especially from people I cannot entirely trust. Sinead plays too many games on too many layers. Sometimes, it scares me. With a sigh, I gather a few maps we will need and head towards the dream to pack.